Alma looks straight ahead, fully focused, and utters his spell of fireball. He thrusts his hands forward, and a giant fiery beam cut through the field. The shockwave rushes forward and hits right in the center of the target, a deafening, huge explosion. Alma looks around, smoke swirls above the target, and his servant bursts into applause, exclaiming that he is wonderful. She tirelessly repeats with admiration how impressive it is that a boy his age uses magic with such precision. And the servant became even more delighted and, full of enthusiasm, called him the very first wunderkind ever in his family. Alma froze in place, smiling a little awkwardly and telling her that she was clearly overdoing the praise. But she does not give in, immediately asking him if he really thinks she is exaggerating. She notes that the power and precision of that last spell were on a completely different level, especially because he still has not received his official gift, so his natural talent is almost unknown to anyone. Alma lowered his eyes and thinks about that special gift as if he was supposed to receive it eventually, but no. They knew at 15 the goddess grants everyone a special ability, and the combat types are the most valuable among all. Suddenly, right next to him, a huge pillar of energy strikes the ground. The shockwave was so strong that Alma had to cover his face, and the mage sharply exclaimed. He almost froze in front of the display, instantly realizing that he was seeing high-level lightning magic, and he says that with that person, you can never guess. It's impossible, even to say where the attack will hit. Alma calls his older brother Keith, and he appears, all so arrogant. Keith looked to the side and told Alma what he sees. He is still here, training just as hard as always. The maid got excited again and exclaimed that this was exactly what she expected from the most talented family member. And she continues to praise his purple gift of the lightning sorcerer, saying even the guards consider him a true ace. Alma praises his brother, saying that he is doing exactly what everyone expected from him, especially since he has already mastered those high-level gifts so well. Alma asks what he wants from him, and adds that he is surprised he didn't think Keith would come all the way here just to talk. Keith freezes for a second, as if he remembered something, and he tells Alma that their father actually has a little time to see him now. Alma stands stunned as Kit adds that this whole meeting is just for him. Later that night, the two sit down for a quiet, elegant dinner in the main hall. Their father lifts his eyes from the plate and asks if it is true that the ceremony is tomorrow. He almost stops eating for a moment and confirms that he is to receive his gift then. He just looks at the plate, and quietly reckless pressure of the big day is finally making itself felt. Lord Fellows says with a bitter smile that he tried to persuade Kureha and Keith to join them, but they simply did not listen. He quickly waved it off, smiling. It's nothingsy are both pros at their work and always up to their ears in it. The mood at the table changes as he looks at Alma and admits that he is actually very nervous. He begins aloud to ask himself whether Alma will truly receive a gift worthy of their surname. After a moment, he wipes his mouth with a napkin and decides to speak frankly about what he really expects. He looks directly at Alma and says he sincerely hopes that this child will inherit his title of the sage. Alma just stares back, completely stunned. The weight of the title of sage overwhelms him in an instant. It's a huge thing after all. His father is a legendary sage, and his mother is a top-level sorceress, so everyone expects that the children in their family will eventually receive some insanely powerful magical gift. Even the eldest brother, Kureha, has already become famous as the Wizard of the Red Lotus. And there is also the second son, Kit, who is already known as the Wizard of the Purple Lightning, and this becomes clear, in this family, everyone gets their own special gift, intended for a certain type of magic. Both older brothers have the strongest magical gifts that make them special, and you. But there is one gift that is on a completely different level compared to everything else. The gift of the sage is the most powerful thing a wizard can have. It opens all kinds of magic before him. This is exactly how Alma's father single-handedly quickly raised that man's surname. The idea that there are two sages in a row in the family is huge, and Alma truly feels how it presses in his chest when his dad says he has been watching him closely for a long time and is counting on him a lot. He assures Alma that he will definitely become an important person in the family, regardless of what gift he receives. But the real shock came when he said he had freed all plans to watch the ceremony tomorrow. Alma wipes his eyes with his sleeve, deeply moved by his father's words, thinking about how happy he is, and whispers to himself that he will give everything he has to this. Finally, the day of the ceremony has come in this huge temple. The entire place is packed with people. Alma tells himself that it is not a problem if he does not become a sage, and even when his gift seems small or unimportant, he is still ready to accept it. The priest stands by the altar when Alma looks into the distance with a serious face and silently promises to repay his family for everything they have done for him, starting right now. Suddenly, the priest loudly shouted Alma's name across the hall, officially starting the announcement, while his father stands in the crowd and looks with a piercing, extremely tense gaze. All of Alma's attention is fixed on his father, and the rest of that man's family seemed frozen, waiting for the big reveal. The priest looks at the results and begins to precisely say what Alma's gift is, but hesitates for a second, leaving everyone almost frozen there with closed eyes, just waiting to learn his fate. The priest looks at the results and freezes. He is completely silent and utterly bewildered by what he has seen. He looks at the crowd and cannot comprehend how such a thing could have happened at all, while the silence stretches on. The crowd begins to whisper, the air becomes tense, so Alma's father shouts out and asks the priest why he is so confused. His father presses, demanding the result, and the priest stammers, barely uttering the announcement, and finally admits that Alma has no gift. His father just stands there, frozen with an empty gaze. He is so shocked that words do not even come out of his mouth. Alma looks around, and reality bursts into the room. The heir of that man's family received no gift, leaving. He remains standing there with wide-open eyes, completely stunned by the news that he is actually powerless. He knows not having a gift is almost unheard of, and he cannot understand why it happened to him. The crowd begins to insult him, saying that the son of the wise man turned out to be such a disappointment. The pressure is so strong that Alma feels as if he cannot even breathe. As he walks away, the word incompetent repeats endlessly in his head, and the whole situation is incredibly painful. He almost freezes in place with an expression of complete disbelief on his face and says that there must be some mistake because the rules are simple. Every person must receive a gift. And when the priest and Lord Fellows walked away, his dad says that this whole thing has never happened before, but he seems somewhat sure of something. Alma watches him leave and wonders if his dad is really trying to protect him. He begins to think about the word effort and tells himself that he will work with all his might. He remembers how his father wholeheartedly said that he very much hopes Alma will inherit his title of the sage. He tries to stay positive, believes that all the training still serves some purpose, looks at his dad and says he will do everything possible to meet these expectations, but Lord Fellows just goes on, saying he has been watching Alma since childhood and is sure he will become a valuable addition to the family, and this makes Alma shout at him once again. He hoped that dad still cared about him despite what happened at the ceremony, but then, suddenly his father's face twisted completely with disgust, and he sharply blurted out, "Never call me father again." He continues walking without looking back, asking Alma if he still hasn't realized how much trouble he is in. The crowd goes wild and shouts that this cannot be. Alma just stands and understands. No matter what this gift is, he is in great trouble because Lord Fellow seems about to explode with rage. He pulls his hand aside, looking at his son only with disgust, and Alma remains standing alone before the large stone arch, completely stunned, watching as everyone turns away from him, while father says that mother has a bad gift, half the trouble, but completely without a gift, a real disaster, and people in the crowd whisper that the third son is a complete failure. They begin to guess if something is wrong with the family lineage. The crowd noise grows, and someone asks if he even hears all the dirt being said about him. They tell him that he left and disgraced the family name. Others just shrug, saying he is probably just a spoiled son of rich people who never had any real talent, and they keep telling him, "Shame on you," while tears gather in Alma's eyes as he listens to everyone tearing him apart. Then Lord Fellows shouts loudly for everyone to hear. The Fellows family does not need this incapable boy at all. He can't even get a single gift. He says Alma's name one last time, putting a full stop on it, tells him he is banished from the family forever, leaving everything behind. Later, he barely sat in the tavern, looking broken and out of himself, leaning over the glass and sighing deeply, trying to digest that his life is ruined. Alma hears people whispering nearby that it was the family of that famous man they just saw, and he suddenly understands. The news that he was expelled has already spread everywhere. He takes a sip, and the worker says the pint costs 700 gold, which might. This makes him remember the 50,000 gold the family gave him when they expelled him. He knows such a place is no home for someone as naive as he is. He slams his palm on the table and tells himself he can't just keep drinking like this. He is in despair. He almost stands up, but anxiety immediately grips him. How will he survive on his own at all? Finally, the stress takes over, and he simply falls right to the floor. He lies down, completely exhausted, staring into emptiness because this is F. Finally, it dawns on him that he is completely alone. He looks at the ceiling and realizes that in the whole world he has not a single ally left, and therefore he no longer has a surname or anything to be proud of, and and he feels that no one will ever pay attention to him again. Alma lies on the floor, completely knocked out. He only looks up and mumbles that everything is a total mess. He begins to wonder if he was really lucky to see what will happen next, laughing to himself that this is supposedly his gift, when a man. Suddenly, a message appeared out of nowhere. It said that his reincarnation gift has finally been activated. Alma's eye opened wide in shock when he looked at the screen. He is completely stunned and cannot comprehend what is happening. He sits up and asks what the voice in his head is, just as the system announces that he will regain all memories and powers from past lives. He begins to question everything, wonders what kind of gift this is and what, damn it, reincarnator means, but suddenly his status starts updating. He grabs his head and seems to lose his mind from pain, while the system meanwhile confirms that the transfer was successful. Some guy nearby looked at him and sharply asked what was wrong with him, telling Alma that he was clearly exaggerating because of the pain. But the system does not slow down. Another message appears. Supposedly, he officially inherited offensive magic, and then it just doesn't stop. A bunch of messages flooded his field of vision, confirming that he now has ready defensive, restorative, supportive, and even spacetime spells. System notifications do not cease. Spatial, spiritual, and even forbidden magic all successfully inherited, and Alma screams in pain as his old memories finally fall into place. He gasps and begins to understand the truth. Finally, everything falls into place. Why, at the official ceremony, he did not receive a new gift because he really didn't need any. He understands that the true power was always within him, but even before he managed to realize this, a huge hand reaches out and grabs him by the face, and he just watches. Alma is completely stunned when some man explodes, shouts, and demands to know what the hell he thinks he is doing. Alma just looks back calmly and asks what is wrong, and that guy points a finger and says that Alma is definitely behind all this. And looking around the room, you see complete chaos. In the tavern, everyone either collapsed over their glass or lies face down on the floor, and only one man in armor barely holds on. Alma understands. This is just the pressure of his own magic now that he has inherited the power of his past life. It seeps and bursts out from everywhere. Turns out that anyone nearby who cannot cope with such an amount of raw energy is simply completely overwhelmed by the presence of the reincarnator, leaving. The armored man trembled like a leaf, barely standing on his feet, and tried to ask what Alma really did to everyone. The guy in armor is completely losing his mind, gasping for breath, asks Alma who he really is. Damn it. Alma just stands there looking quite awkward about all this. The boy proudly points out that he somehow managed to knock out everyone in this place. He is all sweaty and looks intently at Alma, but Alma simply raises her hand and nervously tells him that probably a big misunderstanding is happening right now. He absolutely refuses. He decisively says that there is no longer any point in arguing. One of the visitors has been struggling with curiosity for a long time and addresses Alma. What are these things, and that's all? And Alma just nods while the guy points to the strange stones sticking out all over the field. Alma tells them that this is actually a crystal of magical essence, and this only confuses the visitor, and Alma as well. Alma jokes that the scientist probably already knows this, but still begins to explain that the nutrients in the soil are everything. He tells them that the absolutely most important thing in this soil is its magical essence. He explains that this magical essence is actually a tiny particle present in everything. And when it is in the air and in the soil, plants grow much better by absorbing it. By throwing crystals into the field, he seemingly forces the harvest to become the best, leaving. Cedric froze without words. He cannot comprehend that such a method is even possible. The scientist is visibly trembling. He realized that what the boy just described is a real breakthrough. Cedric is literally shaking. He cannot believe that he never thought of such a method before, and he keeps repeating this magical essence of the word to himself, as if trying to solve a riddle. He begins to explain that the magical essence usually just floats in the air or in the ground. It is not something that naturally turns into crystals, but rather the opposite. But when adventurers were really popular, these crystals were found only in the deepest and most dangerous corners of dungeons, so they were too expensive to use even for farming. He looks almost straight in the eyes and asks how such a boy managed to obtain something so rare that. This completely unsettles Alma. He clearly cannot say that it is a trophy from a dungeon he passed in a past life, so he simply lies and says he got it from some acquaintance. Cedric thinks that the one who gave it to him probably did not even suspect how valuable it really is, although he had other thoughts, he still had one big question for the boy. He says that now it is clear why the harvest is so high quality, but the calculations do not add up. There cannot be so many people in this tiny village to plant and harvest everything so quickly, so he He asks Alma if they hired a lot of outside help to get the job done, but Alma just says no. Alma tells Cedric that the kingdom's representatives are quite clever, and then adds with a smile that he asked his assistant to hide so as not to scare the guest. Cedric just stands, completely confused, not understanding what that boy is talking about at all. Suddenly, right in the middle of the fields, a whole pack of boars and wolves emerges. Cedric completely loses his head from panic. Real monsters are standing right in front of him. He barely keeps calm and explains that these are the same monsters that once attacked the village, but now they have been tamed. They work in the fields in exchange for food. He boasts a huge stone slab, the relief of the Lord of Demons, which they say can enchant any monster that looks at it. Cedric watches as a giant boar pulls a heavy cart with supplies, still doubting whether one stone can really save people from being eaten. But Alma explains, these are only low-level monsters. They lack the strength to resist the magic of the stone, let alone a beast of the Fenrir class. To prove her point, Alma demonstratively shows a board that, like a circus act, jumps through a flaming ring and tells Cedric that they can do almost anything he wants. Cedric turns pale as if he saw a ghost, and says to Alma in horror that he could not have that stone. It is a legendary artifact of the demon race. Edward is clearly sweating and looks tense. In his thoughts, he knows that the demon race would never let go of such a legendary item because of their pride forcing him. His head spins even more. He wonders why anyone in such a remote place could even have it, and cannot understand how someone as young as Alma managed to get it. Alma tries to lighten the situation with a slight smile, says she understands their surprise, but they need not worry. The monsters obey any command they are given. Suddenly, Cedric began to sob into his handkerchief and whispered that this was simply incredible, while Alma stood completely bewildered by his reaction. Cedric admits that he would never have believed it, that monsters could be turned into a workforce like this, and he considers it the perfect solution for a tiny territory desperately lacking people. And while Cedric cries and wipes his eyes, Alma just watches and wonders, do all appraisers feel so emotional about their work? We move on. Cedric turned to his companion and asked Edward, don't you agree how impressively all this is unfolding? Edward cannot deny. The territory of Flanders has undergone an incredible change. Just a few days ago, it was a dull, relatively flat area, and now it is a completely different matter. While Alma looks up at him, Edward quietly mutters that he needs to prepare a report on this as soon as possible. Later, Luna looks sad, saying that people have already begun to doubt whether her father is fit to be a lord at all. Someone quickly replies that this is not true at all. Cedric smiles confidently and says that since he is a judicial appraiser, he will recommend the council to take this village as an example to show everyone how it is done. And this means that if everything goes according to plan, the kingdom can really intervene and provide serious support. Luna and Eric can hardly believe the words they hear when Rael suddenly rejoiced and exclaimed to Alma that he really succeeded. Alma was completely taken aback by all the praise, especially when Rael mentioned how much Eric helped to meet. Meanwhile, Eric stands neither alive nor dead, unable to believe how much everything has changed for the better. It is almost unreal for him to comprehend. Suddenly he bursts into tears, saying that until a few days ago he had completely given up on the idea of a shared future with everyone. He clearly cannot endure it. So Rael smiles widely at Alma and does not forget to thank him for everything he has done for the territory. Alma stands and looks at him, a little embarrassed by the attention, while Luna stands aside and looks at them, thinking to herself that Alma is truly incredible. She never thought they could turn the whole situation around in just 3 days. Sanya interrupts and says that Alma is simply different. Luna glanced at her, a little surprised by this remark. Sanya explains with a gentle look that Alma is unlike any person who has come here to him. Luna lowers her gaze and blushes, quietly agreeing with her sister, because the weight of everything Alma has done is finally beginning to reach her. Alma stands outside, looks at the sky and wonders, what is this strange feeling? Everything was supposed to go well, but he cannot shake the feeling that something is wrong. It is that obsessive discomfort that he cannot explain, and because of it, unrest stands in his chest while he worries whether he has messed something up. Meanwhile, in the carriage, someone excitedly says how amazing the territory of Flanders turned out to be. So Cedric intervenes in the conversation, and surprised, says that he never thought this place would be so developed even before their arrival. Edward, with a serious face, agrees. It is true, and so a whole week passes after Edward and Cedric returned home. The territory has completely changed. Monsters took up construction and road repair, so everything became different. One of the locals notices a wolf monster running up and greets it as if it were an old friend. A woman asks if it has already finished the work and offers it some food. It is clear that the residents, who were once frightened, have finally gotten used to their presence. Alma in the middle of the field shows off the magic of her box of things. A black cube hangs right in front of a local farmer, who stands completely stunned by what he sees. The farmer cannot believe his eyes and asks if Alma can just endlessly do that thing, but Alma sighs and says no, explaining that the space inside depends on how much magic a person has, so it changes. Seeing all this, Luna's sister looks quite irritated and mutters that it is simply unfair. She starts complaining that she always has to carry heavy water until her whole body aches with pain. She's simply driven crazy by the fact that Alma so casually uses high-level magic, which she herself does not even know how to use. But Luna is blunt. She tells her sister that it is not Alma's fault, she is just physically weak because she constantly hides in her room. Luna does not calm down. She keeps insisting that her sister grew up without any skills except magic and is generally poorly oriented, while the sister defends herself, saying that she studied magic a lot. Eric sees that the situation is getting a bit tense and awkwardly suggests that maybe it is better to just leave everything as it is so that everyone. Alma stands silently, immersed in thought, and Eric confesses, no matter how hard he tries, such magic really feels like a cheat code. Alma turns to Luna and asks if she wants to try learning magic herself, and this completely catches her sister by surprise. She repeats aloud the words box with items, and it is clear that she has finally found a goal worth pursuing. The two of them enter Luna's room. In fact, it is a huge private library, packed to the brim with books. Alma looks around a bit surprised and says that this is actually her room. And he notices that high-level grimoires are scattered on the floor as if they were trivial things. Luna's sister starts to fidget a little and tries to explain the situation, while Alma just looks at her. She delves into technical details and explains that the skill box of items has two strict requirements. First, the magic power indicator must be at least 1000. Then she raises 2 fingers and adds that the second requirement is the ability to teleport in space using magic. But thinking that her power is only 600, she realizes she still lacks 400 points. Suddenly, she decides to go to the forest to hunt monsters to level up, and Alma has to grab her and tell her to slow down. Alma raises her head with a sly smile and says that since they are already here, they can use the secret weapon that will lead to. Luna's sister looks back at him, completely confused, and asks, "What do you mean by secret weapon?" He pulls out a shining fruit, and she immediately recognizes it, asking in surprise, "Is this really a golden apple?" A quick glance shows it is a rare fruit of the sacred tree that enhances mana, and Alma says that eating it will give her an additional 500 to total mana. She looks at that glow as if doubting and asks him if she really has to eat it. Alma asks if she simply doesn't like how golden food looks and offers to find something else if it seems too strange. She just smiles and says she is not going to doubt him now, taking the fruit in her hands, and she bites off a big piece, looks completely shocked, and unable to hold back, exclaims that it is actually tasty. She begins to enthusiastically say that it is perfectly sweet and refreshing, and the sourness balances everything just right. Alma admits that he has had this before. It was incredible. Although the boost reaches a maximum of 2500, he still wants more. Sanya feels a warm sensation spreading throughout her body, as if energy is bursting inside, and she suddenly feels that her magical power is truly growing right here and now. She looks at Alma with a piercing gaze and asks him if she can have another one. But Alma tells her that later she can get another one, and that keeps her focused on the task because Sanya says that the only thing they lack right now is a teleportation spell, like the one Alma used before. She saw it in grimoires called instant movement magic, but those books always said spatial magic is incredibly rare and very difficult to perform. Alma thinks about how much the quality of those magical books can differ. It all depends on which one you find, and it turned out that just finding a book with the necessary information is only half the battle when trying to learn it. So, why the first step to mastering spatial magic is to perfectly feel and understand the space around you. Alma goes over the basics and imagines how teleportation works, exchanging the magical essence of the destination with where you stand, which is. That's why Sanya says, if you take a familiar place, everything becomes much simpler, and Alma completely agrees with her. Sanya explains that the trick is to momentarily make the distance between those two zero during the exchange, although in reality it is quite difficult. You must clearly imagine landing exactly at those coordinates to truly master the spell. She admits that all this is hard to understand at once, but she is still ready to try and give it her all, so Alma loudly encourages her. Since she is still learning, Sanya asks Alma, won't he show her an example of how it should look, and But Alma decides to start small and chooses a short distance across the room as the target for the first attempt. They worked on it for some time, and Sanya encouraged him not to give up and to try the movement again and again until. Suddenly, Luna bursts in to say that the tea is finally ready and they probably should rest a bit. But while Sanya just sits, looking completely exhausted, Alma is already bustling around the room back and forth as if it's nothing at all. Sanya stands completely confused, and Alma is racking his brains on how to explain this insanely strange situation he is in. He decided that this is how it is, and they both lean back for a moment with cups of hot tea. Sanya looks completely drained after training, so Alma says there is no need to rush if it doesn't work the first time, because everyone. Although Luna has a natural sense of magic, it is still better not to rush when learning to move energy. He remembers his training in his previous life. It actually took him a whole month to figure it out, so he tells her to just calm down. She lowers her gaze and says she understands what he means. But Sanya is not going to give up. Suddenly, she puts all her strength into one more attempt, and Alma just watches from the side. She eventually flips over and falls, but raises her eyes in complete shock and asks, did she really just manage to pull that off? Alma's eyes widen, although he was the one who showed her how to do it, by example. He still can't believe that she really learned to teleport so quickly. Sanya stands, catching her breath, but she gives off a serious magical vibe as if she touches her wise gift, and Alma knew that Luna would be natural at this. But Sanya lifts her head and asks if she just made that move with the box of items, barely smiles, and tells her that if she keeps training, she'll soon become a pro. So she takes a sip of tea, just nods, and looks so satisfied with how everything is going. Watch. Looking at her, Alma suddenly realizes she really loves magic just for the sake of magic itself. He involuntarily thinks how quickly Luna grasps everything for her age and is probably the best student he's ever had, but Sanya says she doesn't want to hear that at all from a genius like him. She begins to explain that she had actually studied magic deeply long before she received her official gift. It turned out that her great-grandfather was a legendary mage in the kingdom, so their house was always crowded with books on magic. Since she was little, she was simply obsessed with learning new spells and Alma sees that her passion for this has not faded for a moment as they finish the break. Eric begins to tell Alma about their history, recalling that once their family lived in the royal capital, but it turned out that his father was completely fed up with the constant scandals and fights among the nobility. To protect everyone, they moved to the area where their ancestors came from, and without a doubt, those noble disputes were a real nightmare. They were impossible to handle. Alma looks and feels that Luna and her family really went through a lot to get to where they are now, but Eric says that the local people were incredible. They welcomed them with open arms from the very beginning. He tells how they sat and listened to his father's stories, and the locals even united and built them a proper house because they believed that a lord should not live in a shack. Sanya raises her eyes with a serious expression and says that this is exactly why she so resolutely wants to repay everyone in this territory. Alma just looks at her, she freezes for a moment, and then she gives him a truly warm smile and directly thanks him for all the help he has recently provided them. She knows that thanks to the magic of the box of items, which he is teaching her, they will be able to do much more for people than ever before. Alma turns over in her mind how Luna always calls him unfair, but as soon as he sees Sanya's warm smile, it seems to him that Luna is the one who is unfair. He looks around the village and thinks that as soon as he teaches Luna the necessary magic, these lands will be in excellent condition. She was convinced she could handle almost anything on her own. He wouldn't even have to intervene. It's a somewhat lonely thought. He wonders if this land would be better off without him, and just at that moment, a sharp sound strikes his ear. Sanya asks what happened, and Alma tells her that suddenly it became too noisy outside, so he is just asking what is going on when suddenly, Luna runs up completely frightened and trying to explain what is happening. Outside, someone started shouting, calling for Eric, the Lord of Flanders, saying that he needs to quietly go with them. Eric stands in complete shock and asks why this is happening at all, while a group of knights approaches him. The knight accuses him. Allegedly, he uses monsters for his own benefit, and Alma with the whole family froze like. The soldiers accused Eric of treason against the kingdom and ordered him to immediately stand trial in the royal capital. It has been 3 days since the knights took Eric to the capital, leaving everyone in a state of. Due to the endless waiting and guessing, Alma occupies herself by feeding the village animals to distract herself. Luna tries her best to stay positive, convincing herself and others that everything will be fine, despite the oppressive atmosphere over the village. She calls Alma to get his attention, and he reminds her that her father said he is going there only to explain the situation. He says that if he is innocent, they need to stay calm and stand their ground, and she agrees that this is the only way. grabbing her by the face and promising that they themselves will defend this territory until her father returns. Later, Alma and Luna spent time with Raul when Raul notices someone and says that he is finally back on his feet. Luna shouts his name, and Alma is fixated on the man's hand and asks what could have caused such a terrible wound. And there stands a villager, completely devastated, his hand tightly bandaged with thick dressings. Other neighbors gather around and ask what happened to him, sensing that things are about to get worse. The wounded man trembles as he tells them that the kingdom's army attacked them in the forest, and he is sure that those soldiers plan to seize the entire territory while Eric is absent. Raul tries to downplay it, telling Alma that maybe he is just too worried, but Alma is not completely sure. One question keeps echoing in his mind. Why does the army have to intervene right now? He looked closer at the man's hand. The wound looked more like it was torn by a claw rather than a sword cut, and some strange powder was falling all over his clothes. He begins to beg for help, sobbing and screaming that his wife and child are still trapped in those forests. Alma does not hesitate for a second, telling the man that he will take care of it. He tells everyone that they are going into the forest to check, and asks Sanya to look after that man while they are gone. When they go inside, Alma suddenly realizes that army was probably just an illusion. Raul is confused, but Alma explains. It is a monster that sprinkles poisonous powder and makes people see what they fear the most. Alma understands. The people living here are probably going insane. They see fake copies of the kingdom's army, and he cannot. He could not get rid of the thought. Why would anyone bring their family to such a dangerous place at all? Raul suddenly shouted when they found two people completely wrapped in thick white cobwebs, hanging there as if they were caught by a predator. Alma says they are completely out of the game, while the group tries to figure out what to do next. And at that moment, out of nowhere, a whole group of soldiers in armor with glowing eyes appears and surrounds them from all sides. Raul, with panic in his voice, asks Alma if he is absolutely sure that these guys are not real. He trembles and can barely speak, shaking with fear, especially when it comes to math. The giant wolf Fenrir appears right before them. Raul gasps her name, and she almost calmly tells him that it is just another false image born from their fears. Raul tries to figure out whether the wolf and the soldiers are just a fiction, but instantly rejects this version and says, no, because it turns out the real monsters hide inside illusions and attack, while their victims are distracted by false images. Raul begins to get very nervous, and with a trembling voice asks if they really will have to fight an entire army. Alma remains calm and quietly says that, apparently, yes. He stands right there, a guy with a serious expression and a high-collared coat, looking like a real pro. Alma understands that the forest pulls people's fears out of them, and admits that this man is the last person he ever wanted to see. Suddenly, Raul draws his sword and shouts that something is approaching them. The giant wolf Fenrir leaps into the air with claws extended, and Raul tenses, preparing to take a direct hit. Alma just stands and watches as the wolf lunges in attack, not even flinching before this huge beast, because he knows, no matter how plausible these illusions are, they will never be able to use the true ability of that person. He pulls out a glowing magical orb, thinking that even if the monster can hide its true form, his magic of detection can still track them down. He activates his search sense, spreading a huge net over the trees and Jew. And suddenly he finds it. A real monster is hiding right there on the tree trunk. Alma, without wasting a second, releases a powerful blast of advanced wind magic to clear the area, and when the dust began to settle, Raul finally noticed the illusion is falling apart. But almost suddenly notices something and loudly shouts to Raul to look up because from the trees a dark shadow falls right on them, and it turns out to be a giant creepy moth monster that lets out a loud roar and lunges to attack. Raul shouted to Luna, but Alma had already managed summons sharp earth pillars to intercept the strike. Luna just stands and looks at him. She cannot believe that he so calmly uses the highest level magic as if it were just a joke. Raul thinks the fight is over and says that now everything is decided, but Alma coldly cuts him off. He is wrong. He turned to the frightened man, who was holding his family close, and asked if the three of them had tried to escape the city. The man simply responds with a look completely confused and asks what Alma even meant. You almost start to piece it together. These people chose the dangerous forest instead of the main road, and noticing hints of the kingdom's army, he suddenly realized they are definitely running away from something. Then the man remembers there is a rumor that some great sage Julius betrayed Eric, and this simply makes Alma ask who he really is. Turns out Julius is the strongest wizard in Familiar, and actually rules the entire country as a cold, ruthless prime minister who mercilessly destroys everyone who stands in his way. Recently, he even executed a lord just because of some premonition, and in a few days seized his lands. Sanya raises his eyes to his sister, his face full of anxiety. The atmosphere is already quite tense. The man does not stop. He explained that Alma is an outsider, so he does not know how terrible Julius is, and they can never guess when the army will appear. So the man admits, he always thought that using monsters as workers, as they do in these parts, is a bad idea. Suddenly someone shouted that he is incredibly selfish, and Alma looked around to see who was shouting. And it is Luna, who looks completely irritated. She directly puts him in his place for such words after they barely escaped alive together. Luna gets in the man's face and asks if he really intends to dump all the hard work on Alma. Alma just watches her walk away, and she does not calm down, shouts and asks if he forgot what her father always said: believing in people means truly taking responsibility. Alma turns to Sanya with a smile and says thank you to her, but he feels quite good and does not stop there because he looked at the group and said that everything was fine, because he knows that everyone is just very scared right now, and then he admits that all this mess is his fault, because he did everything half seriously, but now he is ready to fix it. Alma looks down with a serious face and says that he will prove to everyone what he is capable of, and placing his hand on his heart, swears that if an army of the kingdom ever appears, he will not allow them to lift a finger against anyone. Eric looks at the guy as if he has gone mad and asks what he even intends to do after such words. Then he, as if not believing, asks, does Alma really think that he can handle an entire army on his own? Alma just raised his eyes to the trees and said that he needs at least to gather enough military force so that everyone finally stops worrying. Alma looks quite confident as he reassures the group, don't worry, I already have a plan, and he starts to leave, waving his hand and saying that he will be away for a short time and asks to watch over everything, although someone tries to call him back. Meanwhile, several high-ranking officials examine legendary items with surprise: the fertilizer of the god of harvest and magical crystals, noting that no ordinary lord would have such rare treasures. Edward says that some child connected to the Empire is involved here, and they even came across a relic belonging to the demon race. He already understood the territory of Flanders either conspired with the Empire or made some suspicious deal with a powerful demon. But Julius asks him not to rush and not to make premature conclusions yet, and Edward just agrees. Julius knocked on the table with his hand and asked how Lord Eric has been lately, which led to they say that Eric just quietly sits in the cell and insists that he is innocent, while someone just hums under their breath upon hearing this news. Julius stared into the distance and whispered Eric's name to himself, as if planning his next move. He strictly emphasizes that Eric should be treated with respect, because this man might turn out to be the perfect bait. The full moon hangs over the building, and someone sighs, feeling that they are simply being used both as a pawn and as a bat. Returning inside, you see Luna. She is wrapped in a blanket and sleeps so soundly next to her plush teddy bear, as if completely unconscious. But it turned out that this was just a cover. She is actually standing outside near the trees, as determined as a SH. She sneaks through the forest under the moonlight, trying to be quiet and unnoticed. Suddenly she runs into Raoul and Sanya, who are waiting for her, and Raoul asks what she is even doing so late on the street, making Luna completely relaxes. She cannot believe that she was just caught by Sanya and Raoul at the same time, and she stands stunned, trying to understand how they could have found out after all. A minute ago she was in bed. Sanya does not hold back and directly exposes her, saying that she knew Luna was only pretending to sleep, and then she tells her sister that since she heard the name Julius, she has been acting very strangely, as if she has too many thoughts in her head. Sanya asks if Luna really intends to try to overthrow Julius by herself, saying that she has always been too reckless, and Luna just stands in complete silence. Suddenly Luna rushes into the forest, leaving Sanya standing there, frozen in complete surprise, and Sanya shouts, asks why she is running away at all, and Raoul just stands and watches as it all happens. She keeps calling her sister to stop, but Luna is already heading deeper into the trees, and Sanya looks completely stressed, shouting at her sister again, trying not to fall behind. But it doesn't last long. Luna ends up face down on the ground, and Raoul mocks that she has no endurance at all. He lunged forward, Alma's eyes wide open, as he realized he had to move very fast to avoid getting hit. Alma leans back, dodging an attack in the middle of a dirty tavern, and at the same moment the truth about his gift, the reincarnator, begins to slowly dawn on him. The warrior in armor keeps swinging tirelessly, but the narrator says that this gift is what Alma actually received in his first life. It turned out that the one who has the gift of transformation can use it only on Sefer, a single rebirth. As soon as this person turns 15, all memories and abilities from their past life will flood in at Onsind. Right now dark energy is already beginning to swirl around Alma's hands. Alma meets the gaze of her opponent, and at that moment finally awakens her true power, the legendary dark magic she had carried within all this time. Alma concentrates energy and whispers the word void, extending a hand that triggers. A huge skeleton made of dark smoke looms over the boy. While people in the room just stand, catching their breath, Alma thinks about how in his first life he decided to become strong, and he devoted his entire second life to refining those skills to perfection, which led to. At the moment he realized this, he finally had all the magic he would ever need for. To the tavern where now everyone has collapsed and is lying on the floor. Looking at his hand, he understood. This is where his new life really begins. The next morning, rumors spread through the city that the son of that man was seen in the tavern. But most of the guards are puzzled. Everyone inside was found unconscious, and no one has any clue how it happened. One of the guys in armor looks up at the tall buildings nearby and wonders if there might be a perfect shelter there. Meanwhile, the guards patrol the streets, and one tells his partner to calm down, he is taking the search too seriously. But that guy reminds him, the family of that lad expects a generous gold reward if they really find the child which Alma hears, hiding in the shadows of the neighboring alley. He quickly realized that the chaos he caused in the tavern was already spreading throughout the city. Standing on the roof, Alma thinks that he was kicked out anyway, so he definitely cannot stay in the Empire and must find where to go. And then he suddenly remembers that the Kingdom of Familia is just west of the place where he is now, so he imagines that place a mighty monarchy with a history of over 200 years, rivaling the Empire. He really remembers that in his past life he had a hideout there, but whether it still stands after 2 centuries, he does not know. Suddenly it dawns on him that 200 years have passed since he was last here. And he suddenly realizes, in his first life, this empire of Elistella did not even exist. Alma looks outside with a smile. He really cannot wait to see how much the world has changed over the last 2 centuries. The guards continue to patrol, and Alma recalls that on Cart Street there once was a trade cart going west, so he rushes into a dark alley to hide from prying eyes. It is still very early, the streets are empty, so he decides not to stop and to keep moving while there is no one around. He almost froze when he saw a familiar face, his brother Kit, who called him a bungler and said he was waiting just for him. Here he is. Kit stands right in the middle of the street, completely blocking the way forward. He remembered the fight in the tavern and told Alma that even after he was kicked out, he is still a disgrace to the family. Kit begins charging lightning magic in his hand and says that their father is very angry because of the mess he made. But Alma grabs him and begs him to wait just a second. He sincerely tells his brother that the story in the tavern was just a coincidence and a misunderstanding, because he really does not want to fight with his family. Alma tries to stay calm, says that he will quietly leave the Empire without making a scene, but Kit is not going to tolerate this. He directly tells Alma that he has not changed at all, and this caught the child by surprise. Luna holds her breath and tells them that she actually met that guy only once, and she begins to recall the gift-giving ceremony in the Great Temple, remembering how everything turned upside down when the title of the sage was announced before a huge crowd, and then this happened. Suddenly, right in front of her appeared this tall, creepy man in a mask. He looked her straight in the eyes and said that his name was Julia. Luna stands completely bewildered and is even more surprised when the voice shouted, calling her a great sage. Yuli leaned closer and quietly whispered to her that it was already obvious she has a real, serious talent. He looked her straight in the eyes, invited her to work for him, and promised to give her everything she desired. Luna looks at his outstretched hand and understands. Going to the kingdom is the only chance to save her father. She knows that her father would not really be happy if he were freed just like that, but he will be safe, and that is all that matters. With a focused, unwavering gaze, she tells everyone, just don't stand in her way. Suddenly she fires a lightning bullet straight into the ground. A huge flash of light blinds everyone. Sanya can barely see through the blinding flash and shouts, "Raoul," while dust rises everywhere. Raoul slyly smiles through the smoke and says he can track anyone just by their footsteps, even if he sees nothing. Luna is completely frozen with surprise when Raoul warns her don't underestimate how fast the Wind Knight can move. Luna lowers her gaze, a shadow in her eyes, quietly apologizes to Drutskson and promises to help when she returns, while the roof of the building suddenly collapses and completely catches Raoul off guard, while Luna simply walks away from the chaos. She dashed with all her might, and Sanya just stands and thinks, did she really arrange for that shaky roof to fall at that very moment? Raoul understands that she cunningly uses the town's location to her advantage, but he is a bit busy right now. Someone is stuck under a pile of firewood and loudly calls for help. Luna is completely out of breath, but she knows. As soon as she crosses the territory boundary, she is almost home. Just one more. A powerful spell called Seed of the Heavenly Tree activates, and giant wooden pillars burst from the ground, completely blocking her path. Someone shouts that they have finally cornered her, and Luna freezes, seeing that Sanya is standing right there. Sanya looks very upset about the situation and says to her sister, "Be a good girl and stay put at least this time." She tries to calm everyone down and says that the best thing they can do is just wait together until Alma appears. Sanya looks away and tells her, "Just talk to him." Luna stands there, completely confused and not knowing what to do next. Luna looks around with a gentle smile and quietly thanks Alma for everything he has done so far, but the moment was interrupted. She asked for help with this territory, and a strange light began to emanate from her body. Raoul is simply stunned. She really teleports, although Alma said that she can only move a few inches at a time. He just looks at her with a nervous expression, thinking that she is a real genius for pulling off such a move right now. It becomes truly difficult. Raoul looks around. There is pitch darkness all around, and he has no idea how they are supposed to search in this forest at all. Sanya stands, noticeably irritated, and tells Raoul that her sister always behaves like that. She says that as soon as an idea comes to her mind, she instantly runs away, listens to no one, so she usually gets lost. She looks irritated. Her sister insisted that Alma was the one they could really trust. And suddenly she just breaks down, shouting at the top of her lungs that her sister is a complete idiot. She shouts that she doesn't even care if her sister gets lost again, and Raoul stands aside and only thinks about how insanely loud her voice is. One of them ends the conversation, saying that he will handle everything, making sure that everything is ready. He glances at the small object in his hand and asks again what the name of that child was when SC. The man nearby, covered in scars, pauses for a moment. He describes him as a guy who gave advice to the local lord and even delivered some rare items, and F. Finally, she settles on the name Alma Fellows. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Alma stands upright, clearly fully focused on. Looking for someone, he calls into the void. That person still knows how to hide perfectly, and he admits it took him until sunset to track her down. Suddenly, the huge wolf Fenrir appeared and mockingly said how strange it was. "This time the boy is hunting me." Alma did not blink an eye and immediately told the giant wolf that he actually came out here because he needed to ask a big favor. He does not back down, stands right in front of the beast's snout and shouts Fenrir's name, receiving his full attention. With an absolutely serious expression on her face, Alma directly tells the Lord of the Forest that she wants to fight him. Fenrir sounds quite surprised by such a request and asks if she is really serious about the fight, but Alma simply firmly says yes. Alma stands firmly in place and directly tells the giant wolf that they need to fight, and he is completely serious. The time to act has come. They were going all in, even ready to stake their lives on this battle. Fenrir just looks at him and says there is absolutely no reason for them to do something like that. That's right, he says he owes the boy a favor, but thinks that dying in battle is too much, and in general, he has been looking for his son since morning, so he tries to brush Alma off, saying that they can talk later. Alma becomes serious and says that he does not have the luxury. Playing cautiously, suddenly he unleashes a powerful attack that makes a huge hole right in. He crashes into the side of the mountain. He keeps rushing while the stones around them are just beginning to Everything is falling apart. Fenrir asks what is happening, saying that Alma is not the type to be capable of such a thing. He is acting like a fool out of nowhere and demands to know what happened, and Alma asks if he has heard the rumors that the kingdom caught Eric after all. The wolf lives so close to humans. Fenrir again mentions the rumors. Supposedly, the Lord worked with monsters to plan a rebellion. And Alma, lowering his gaze, admits that he actually feels somewhat responsible for everything that happened. So Fenrir explains that he was given the task to prove that Eric never wanted to rebel. He is already thinking about how to pull this off. He almost suggests that maybe giving the kingdom a rare young monster could. Loyalty to the Lord. Fenrir instantly guessed and asks if he means his son, but Alma just called it empty talk, asking if this is finally enough reason for them to start a fight. Suddenly Fenrir says, "I just became too old," and this completely caught Alma by surprise. The giant wolf bares his teeth and sharply says that he is already too old to just lean back and watch Alma's heart darken. Everything instantly changes when Fenrir finally stops holding back and releases a huge burst of energy. Alma's eyes widen as he realizes that Fenrir has just dissolved into the air, only for a huge wolf to appear right behind him. Fenrir froze. He was sure he had caught the boy by surprise, but Alma stands there completely unharmed, as if the attack hadn't even touched him. The boy did not hesitate and began to summon advanced wind magic, striving to raise his level. to level the entire area with one powerful move, which he calls High Storm. When the wind dies down, Alma simply nods to himself and says, "Finally, I understand." He glanced at Fenrir and asked if that was the shadow escape move he had just seen, while he He forms a picture in his mind. The wolf jumps from shadow to shadow, dodging. He barely scratched his chin, honestly admitting that he really thought the last strike had taken him down, but it is Fenrir who is truly impressed and thinks that the magical power of this boy is on a completely different level. Fenrir realizes that in a direct magical confrontation with Alma he cannot win, so he decides to shake up the game a bit, telling the boy that no matter what his power is, he is still just a wizard. The giant wolf shouts a move called Shadow Devourer, and suddenly these dark beast-like figures. The figures begin to crawl out directly from the shadows. Alma watches as they appear and realizes that the shadows themselves transform into weapons. Numerous claws rush at him from all sides. Alma remains alert, thinking how annoying it is that these attacks appear. Without any warning, he knows if he gets too distracted by the shadow monster, then the real Fenrir is going to burst in and deliver the finishing blow just when he least expects it. Fenrir really praises him, saying this guy is much more cautious than he initially thought, but Alma pretends to be calm. He notices that the main group deliberately stays behind, and it is quite clear to him the wolf is here. Alma explains that his instant reaction barrier is his own technique. He created it by mixing detection and protection magic. It's very simple. He senses the approach of an attack, instantly assesses how much damage it will cause, and automatically creates a barrier strong enough to stop it. While this works, he doesn't need to fear that some unexpected strike will catch him off guard. But the spell is so complex that it burns a huge part of his energy. He rushes through the shadows, knowing that he cannot hold this barrier forever. The shadow wolves keep attacking, and it becomes increasingly clear that Fenrir is actually better than him in almost all combat metrics. She just hasn't acted aggressively yet, and if she continues to use her speed and numerical advantage to control the fight, she can only buy a little time until he completely runs out of strength. Fenrir looks at him as if she could break him with a single glance. This made Alma realize that she could simply overwhelm him with tactics and end it here and now. He felt the need to change his approach, so he began casting the magic of physical enhancement, instantly raising his physical strength and endurance to stay in the game. He is not finished yet, but he immediately activates agility and reaction to the maximum, raising them to the limits of possibility. Alma does not let the pace fade instantly, activates an evasion boost so he can run even faster. But he does not stop there. Lightning fast increases defense and endurance to become even stronger. In addition, he activates enhanced vision and a presence detection system. Fenrir looks at him, stunned that he can cast all these spells at once. I notice that he layers all his enhancements one on top of another, just to close the distance between them. One of the shadow wolves lunged forward with its jaws wide open, but Alma is ready for this. The pack attacks him from all sides, but he remains calm amid the chaos. He flashes through the air, dodging the claws by a hair with his new speed. Hitting him is almost impossible. Turning defense into counterattack, he delivers a heavy kick that strikes powerfully, and then he throws all his weight into the next strike to maintain the pressure. Fenrir stares at him, amazed, and says that finally the time has come to get serious. He barely stayed in place, looking at the huge wolf settled on the rocks opposite. He slyly smiled and told her to stop holding back and finally show him her true strength. Alma does not back down, continues to press and ask if this is really all he is capable of, and because of this Fenrir calls him a true monster. Fenrir honestly admits to himself she did not think he could actually deal so directly with her shadow army, but she raises her eyes to the sky and feels the time for what will come next is simply perfect. Everything starts shaking with a loud rumble, and Alma stands still, not understanding what the hell is happening. He looks at the horizon and suddenly realizes that the sun is finally beginning to peek over the edge, and then Fenrir simply smiles, telling him that from now on everything will change. A wild dark energy covers everything around, and it declares that he has stepped into its territory. Everything acquires an ancient legendary atmosphere, as if they stepped right into the old tales about Fenrir himself. Old legends whisper, when the world finally fades, Fenrir is the one who will swallow the sun and the moon whole. He barely begins to understand what this means for him right now. In other words, darkness is her native element, and he stands right in the middle of it, while Fenrir stands on the edge of the cliffs and looks down, just waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, these wild bursts of energy began to crash onto Alma's magical shields from all sides. He looks completely stunned, as if he did not expect this. The strangest thing there was not even the slightest hint or sign that the attack was about to happen. She actually just flashed through the shadows and struck him in a heartbeat. It is an unstoppable strike that no one can dodge, and it turns out that this is actually Fenrir's strike. She has a special power to influence those around her, and when she howls, the shadow covering the apocalypse completely engulfs everything. Fenrir does not stop the pressure, telling Alma that it is completely pointless even to try to escape, and Alma suddenly realizes that defenses alone are not enough. He begins to charge light magic to explode across the entire area with a huge flash, shouting for the light to spread and shine. But Fenrir does not even flinch, simply repeating that none of this will affect her. Suddenly a powerful blow strikes Alma and knocks him off his feet, and the blow is so strong that it throws him back. He clearly barely keeps up with. Seeing how fast she moves, he decisively changes tactics and resorts to advanced earth magic. He launches the move Volcanic Stone, and giant stone pillars burst from the ground, and when the dust settled, he realized the light was not to drive away the shadows, it only showed where she would strike next. He holds firmly inside the radiant shield, while the entire forest floor simply shatters into pieces. Alma grits his teeth. The pressure of the battle begins to weigh on him. He barely holds on while Fenrir tells him that all his efforts are in vain, shadows begin to creep around, and she explains that she can move through the darkness the very moment he tries to attack, making her unpunished. He cannot hit even once. She notices that his defense slipped and asks if he is losing the ability to block her strikes. So, everything. Alma decides to change the course of events a bit. He focuses wind magic and launches a move called air jump. Launched high into the sky to escape the shadows on the ground, but Fenrir just looks at him from the darkness and calls him a fool for even trying. She asks if he seriously thought that the shadows couldn't reach him in the air, since, after all darkness is her territory. She tells him that escape is absolutely impossible and warns him that she will not give him an easy death. She will tear him to pieces, limb by limb, until he reveals where her son is. Almost with a sly smile, tells Fenrir that she has finally shown weakness, and adds that for such a thoughtful person as she, there was a reason why she was silent. Alma says she would never have chased him so far if she were not completely sure she would win, but suddenly a blinding light falls on the place. Fenrir completely freezes from its brightness. Alma calmly raised her gaze and said that he has his own reasons to want to finish this as soon as possible. Fenrir thinks this is complete madness. The sun should have long since set behind the peaks. She notices something moving high on the mountain peak and begins to doubt what she sees. The light becomes brighter, revealing the true size of the huge cliffs surrounding them. Like a giant eye opened in the rock. It turned out to be Gaku, a mountain mimic hiding in the area to hunt. Fenrir loses his head, realizes that the mountain is actually a giant monster, and wonders if Alma planned this from the very beginning. Fenrir finally understands that Alma was pretending all along to lure her into this open place. She tries to break free before it gets worse, but sees the shadows moving and everything. And Alma reaches out her hand and tells her that the shadows are already coming down from the sky, so there is absolutely no way out. He casts magic on her from the ceiling, and huge heavy chains fall with a crash from nowhere. Chains of silence tightly wrap around her body, and even the metal links wrapped around her muzzle, completely pressing it to the ground. Fenrir is just lying down, completely defeated, and realizes that she has completely lost this fight to some child. She tells Alma that she knows losers really have no right to ask for a favor, but she begged him, if someone has to be taken away, take me, but don't touch my son. Someone's voice says that Alma is really impressive. She defeated the mountain guardian. This is Fenrir's puppy. He is happy because he always knew that Alma is a real monster. Fenrir froze at Alma's words and, looking at him confusedly, directly asks, what did you really mean? Alma simply turns and looks towards the forest. A huge crowd of animals and monsters has gathered in the clearing. It turned out that all these different creatures had been hiding very close all along, and they really were watching the whole fight because they represented all the monsters living in this mountain range. Alma tells Fenrir that since she admitted defeat, the title of guardian officially passed to him, and this completely stunned her. She wonders if this was his plan from the very beginning, but he only says that he knew she is the boss because her son told him so. The little puppy just sticks out his tongue and joyfully exclaims how cool the fight was. Fenrir does not understand why he caused so much trouble. She said she owed him a favor and would have helped if he had just asked. Alma explains that any other way to make the rest of the forest monsters obey him would have taken too much time, so he had to make an effort for each of them to see him. Only then will they recognize him as the new boss of the area. Alma keeps repeating her plan, to overthrow the former guardian while she is still at full strength, the fastest way to achieve results. Because if he gave the kingdom a rare monster cub, it would prove his loyalty, and Fenrir would understand that he was just luring her into a fight. She looks at him intently and thinks to herself that she simply cannot understand this guy at all. Suddenly, Alma fell to the ground and bowed deeply right before her. He looks at the ground with a very serious face and sincerely apologizes to Fenrir for everything. He admitted that he completely betrayed her trust just to gain power and protect his land, even though he knew it would hurt her. He tells her that for now, he will not even ask for forgiveness, but promises someday he will definitely find a way to repay her for this. Alma raises her eyes and asks her, "Please, for now, stay calm." Fenrir just looks at him and thinks to herself how strange this guy is. She stands over him and finally asks, "What are you thinking, behaving like this after everything that has happened?" Alma is confused and asks what she means, but Fenrir simply says that people with real power usually do not bow their heads so easily. She tells him, "You have already tried so hard to show your strength, now retreating would be pointless." She looks at him with such a satisfied expression. She says that she was right about him after all. And then she stuns, tells Alma that from now on he is officially the new guardian of the mountain. Alma thanks her and feels relieved. Finally, everything is moving, and they can start properly preparing for what will come next. The sun shines over the rocks, and Fenrir speaks again. Actually, she has one request for him. Alma again looks up at the huge wolf, a little curious about what kind of request she might make to him, and she just stands there, tall and proud, asking him to give her a real name. The boy is completely stunned, repeats the word in response, as if he cannot believe his ears. Fenrir stands there with her little puppy and says that she wants him to pick a special name for both of them, one that truly. Fenrir again and again explains that she needs at least some proof that she is really his servant. She just stands and tells him that this is her only wish. Finally, Alma gives in and says that he will do it, but he warns her. Actually, he is really bad at choosing names. It has already been 2 full days since Luna left the territory of Flanders, and so far it seems quiet, as if everyone almost still hasn't returned from the forest. Raoul is just wandering near the gates, waiting and watching closely, but so far there is no sign either of an army, nor anyone approaching this area. Raoul sighs heavily, and Sanya sits nearby, completely exhausted and fed up with all this waiting. Raoul is becoming increasingly uneasy, and he is just waiting for Alma to finally appear and everything to return to normal when finally a voice sounded nearby, apologizing for not returning for so long. Raoul and Sanya are in panic. Alma helplessly hangs from the jaws of a giant wolf, and it stands as if nothing happened. Raoul started shouting, asking what the hell happened and whether the wolf finally finished him off, and Sanya just stood and stared at Fenrir in complete shock. Alma hangs there, completely beaten, but he tells Raoul, "You are seeing it all wrong, just look." Because Raoul and Sanya finally notice the rest of the pack hiding in the trees, Raoul barely utters words, just looking at. The gaze fell on the monsters, and Fenrir explained that these creatures actually gathered an army to kill their own mother and rule the forest. Raoul panics even more, shouts at the boy, and not believing, asks if he really managed to defeat the legendary Fenrir by himself. But Alma, still hanging upside down, simply says that it didn't quite happen that way. Raoul admits that the boy is on a completely different level, although he froze for a moment. Suddenly, it dawned on him. He really understands everything that Fenrir and the other monsters are saying. Alma explains that when he gave the wolf a special title, their telepathic connection became much stronger than before, and that's a big deal. Monsters in this world almost never appear on their own with a title. It's a real rarity, and every time this happens, these monsters turn out to be much stronger and smarter than all others of their kind. But it turns out that if you use the magic of names and feed the monster with enough power, a person can actually grant a title whenever they want. Raoul glances at the horned creature, now called Both Wise Monster, and realizes that both it and the wolf look completely different. And this is a real sensation. Boa herself is now so strong that she can challenge a B-rank adventurer, and everyone is completely shocked by this. Alma looks completely exhausted, he admitted. Giving each monster in the forest special titles turned out to be much harder than he imagined. Raoul froze in surprise. Alma really dared to do it, because he thought that even a child with that much mana would sooner or later run out. But Alma just raises his eyes and casually confirms that he did it for all 30,000 monsters living in this area. He explains that now there is a real army of monsters here, from the smallest to the gigantic, and they are all ready to defend this land. Moreover, having these titles, their status can be checked from anywhere, so any trouble is easy to notice from afar. Alma still worries a little that the locals will be scared by the thought that after everything that happened, they will have to rely on monsters to feel safe. Raoul reassures him, "Don't worry, honestly, this is the least of their problems right now, especially when." The local farmers and peasants are already standing ready, looking worn and exhausted from constant struggle. Raoul stands there with his gear, and Alma recalls everything Sanya and Eric have told him recently. He is really beginning to understand what it means to take responsibility. The locals do not give up. Either one of them steps forward and resolutely shouts that he will fight side by side with them. They are already promising to hold the defense against the kingdom's army until Eric returns to our lands. Raoul just laughs and says that it's all because of how hard Sanya worked, and it completely caught her by surprise. Fenrir looked around and said that this place is indeed a fairly stronghold, and Alma just nodded in agreement. But as soon as the peasants notice that the legendary Fenrir is standing right here, they completely lose their heads. They all froze as if they saw a ghost and cannot comprehend how a huge monster is just hanging out nearby. Fenrir simply waved off to get back to work, and at that very moment everything. Alma looks aside with a serious expression. He says that since he is soon leaving for the capital, he needs Fernit to stand guard and watch over the entire domain while he is away. A brief nod from Fenrir, and he quietly said, "I fully understood the orders." The giant is officially known as Fernit, the Great Wolf of the Fenrir race, and the little puppy definitely does not intend to stay aside, waving its paw and saying it understands everything too. Alma holds his breath for a moment, thinking about how long it has been since he was completely without mana. He sits there completely exhausted and suddenly realizes he hasn't even looked at his stats. When he looked at the screen, everything seemed familiar from a past life. He actually knew these numbers by heart. But when he looks closer, something appears before him that makes no sense at all. Although all his insanely high stats have transferred, the levels stubbornly remained at 1. He begins to guess, maybe levels are just a way to measure how much someone's abilities have grown. These reincarnated usually carry with them all the skills and knowledge they acquired as adults. Alma begins to suspect that his level and all progress in development did not transfer along with the rest of the abilities. He looks at his hand, trying to comprehend this strange situation, but honestly, he thinks that he already has enough strength now. He does not need to become stronger. Yet the thought still does not let him go. He cannot help but wonder if there is still room for him to grow. We are heading to the capital of the Kingdom of Familia. A huge army is lined up in the castle courtyard, on alert. Someone looks at the huge crowd and says with admiration how magnificent this whole scene is. Another agrees but says that bringing so many soldiers just to rule a tiny territory is too much. General Achille stands there with a stern look while the conversation continues. The Prime Minister simply smiled smugly, as if the general's concern was just a witty joke. He explains that most of those people are just porters sent to transport the looted money and prisoners from the land they are going to capture. The soldiers stand ready, hearing that even if a 1,000-strong army is sent to capture the territory. The premier simply smiles and says that he himself can easily handle all the battles. General Achilles looks on, his face scarred. He wonders if this is really just a bluff. After all, he is the one called the God of War, and he commands the entire kingdom's army. He really does have a crazy service record. Recently, he single-handedly smashed the defense of an entire territory. But although he is strong, there are plenty of bad rumors around him. The premier finished giving orders to Lord Julius and commanded him to move out and deal with the lands of Flanders. Achilles laughed in response, told the prime minister that he has a great sense of humor, but remained focused. Because the premier is confident, the final result will be the same, no matter what happens. He turned away with a sly smile and said that the plans are ready, and the troops are already ready to move. Achilles gives the prime minister a message. Let him pass it to the bureaucrat Mayashi shut up and just kill the lord faster. He boasted that if he does this, they will show everyone how to smash Flanders in just a couple of days. Finally, he called that man old, but at that very moment, something heavy hits the outer wall with force. A huge spiderweb of cracks spreads across the stone, and the whole place flashes from the force of the blow, and the soldiers below can only watch. The prime minister is completely confused, and Achilles cannot believe his eyes when he notices that the outer wall is really cracking. The stone gave way with a deafening roar, leaving a huge hole right in the center of their defense. When the prime minister peers into the smoke, trying to see who is there, and asks, "Who is it?" Out of the dust and debris comes a girl, completely calm, and says that her name is Luna. She continues walking through the ruins, and as if emphasizing every word, clearly introduces herself. "I am Luna from the domain of Flanders." Before finishing and telling them, she came here to see the great wise Julia. Achilles just stands, looking completely exhausted, and the prime minister looks around, asking where the girl has gone, but outside, the guards are already stopping her and asking if she has at least a referral. Luna is a little confused, so the soldiers explain that she cannot just enter the Great Sage without an official record or a letter of recommendation, which might. Luna finally understands that she misunderstood everything. She really believed that they were interested in her, and the soldiers are just telling her that that's how it works. She gets quite irritated and mutters that with such fans, it's just a hassle. She decides that it's time to change plans and strides forward through the debris. The soldiers panic and demand to know who she is, but she does not back down again, firmly stating that she is dealing with the great sage Julius. "Step back if you don't want to get hurt," she says, and begins weaving advanced wind magic. She unleashes a colossal storm spell that tears through the entire area. It sweeps away the soldiers so fast they don't even finish their sentence. The explosion hits the guards, throwing them backward, and one of them shouts in despair. Another looks around completely bewildered, wondering where the attack went. It simply vanished. Inside, Edward sits relaxed in a chair, laughing, calling Luna a cute, lively, uninvited guest, and decides it's better to check everything himself and Luna freezes in surprise, watching as her magic simply fades completely before her eyes. Edward asks her to quiet down and warns that just by looking she might get caught in a stray shot. And suddenly he emerges through the chaos with a huge, terrifying smile on his face. Luna just looks at him, completely shocked by what is happening, mainly because that guy just now, with bare hands, neutralized a powerful magical attack. Edward strictly ordered the guards to step back, and they immediately parted. Luna stands still, sweat dripping down her temples, and she realizes, now this is a real fight. The atmosphere in the room instantly changes. The level of power emanating from this new guy is completely different. And Luna felt it immediately. She froze in place from the madness coming from him. General Achilles steps forward, his face completely calm. Luna trembles so much she can barely stand. She feels his power is not inferior to the power of the sage Julius and may even exceed it. Achilles finally stopped and looked at them, disappointment audible in his voice as he asked why there was only a girl and a small child here. He doesn't even consider them worthy of his time, so he says he will let them go if they leave immediately. Luna froze in shock. She recognized General Achilles in him, and he grumbled that he lost the chance to blow off steam. She froze, stunned, torn between fear and the thought of whether she actually feels relief that he is not attacking. One of the guards tries to interrupt, telling the general that although it is a child, they were the ones who smashed the castle walls. And Achilles simply tells the guards to handle it themselves. He doesn't want to bother women and children at all. General Achilles is clearly irritated and says that he is in a terrible mood due to personal reasons. I warned them that if he really goes all out, he will destroy everything around, but Alma doesn't care. He has already made a decision no matter how strong this guy is, and Luna supports him, saying she must see the great sage Julius. Because she needs to save her father, she steps forward and firmly demands that he let them pass. Immediately launched a fireball, which caused a huge explosion right in front of the general. Achilles just sighs and grumbles that everyone only talks about Julius and when the smoke cleared, he indifferently says that keeping distance while casting spells is a smart move, you see. He looked completely calm when he admitted that she hadn't even touched him yet, but he was really impressed that she can fight someone with unknown powers. Luna does not retreat at all. Right after the last attack, she releases an even more powerful, advanced wind magic. This really provokes a reaction in Achilles. He is curious that the newcomer treats him like a true enemy. A serious expression appears on Achilles' face, and he says, if they want to play like that, so be it. Instantly tore off so fast that only a blurred silhouette remained, and from that insane force shards flew in all directions, causing a powerful shockwave that forces Luna to press herself to the ground so she won't be blown away. Achilles is completely relaxed, calmly saying that seeing someone teleport is actually a great rarity. Luna is going completely crazy, not believing that he could cause so much destruction with a single stone. After all, he pierced through her advanced magic and still had the strength to break the stone wall behind her. She hadn't even managed to understand this when a hail of stones fell on her like cannonballs. Tearing through the ground, they forced her to dodge sideways, whistling past her head. She looked at him and suddenly realized, this guy is on a completely different level than anyone she had to fight before. Especially when she notices how he reads her eyes to guess her next move, and with each shot his accuracy gets better. Luna does not hold back, summons her water magic, and creates a huge advancing water shield. Surround her from all sides, is about to unleash a huge waterfall on Achilles. But Luna is confident after all, no one can really punch through water, so she is just going to wash him away. But she is completely wrong. she loses her head when she sees how the entire column of water is pushed aside, as if it's nothing. Achilles just smiles like a maniac while breaking through her magic with such force that it stunned her. She realizes that he didn't even touch the water, he dispelled the entire spell with just the pressure of the wind. And the water crashes against the castle wall with a loud roar, leaving everything around completely shattered. Meanwhile, Achilles just stands and looks quite satisfied with how things are going. He looks around and asks if she really believes she can just hide behind the castle walls. He notices that her teleportation skill is truly impressive for a girl her age, but he is not going to stop. Achilles stands over Luna and insists, "Look back, the exit is right there, so just hurry and go," but Eric froze, staring at the castle walls in shock at how much damage the building has already suffered, and Chill begins to guess whether this is some kind of gift for enhancing the body, but immediately realizes an ordinary gift wouldn't give someone such insane power. He thinks that they probably fuel their speed with magic, and even the stones they throw. He believes that with direct offensive magic, they probably don't know how they haven't used it even once, and Still, Luna spoke up and said that she actually didn't run away. Achilles turned around and, outraged, blurted out, "What are you even talking about?" She smiled awkwardly and said that she actually wanted to come here. Suddenly, the ground beneath Achilles' feet splits apart. He is completely unprepared and instantly begins to fall. He doesn't even have time to understand what is happening. He just lets out an embarrassed sound, and his eyes open wide. And one of the soldiers shouts loudly, calling Lord Achilles, while Eric watches all this with a worried expression. And at that moment, a huge piece of the stone wall falls with a crash and raises a giant cloud of dust. Achilles smiles slyly and admits that he actually swapped the place where they stood with the castle gates. I say that this heavy steel gate is practically indestructible, only a high-level attack magic strike can smash it. He looks at her with a confident smile and asks if her power can move other objects besides itself, and Luna just stands stunned, completely overwhelmed, while the dust from the collapse begins to disperse. Leaning right in front of her face, Achilles demands once again, "Where is Julius hiding?" He does not look away from her, asking again and again where Julius is, while she turns away. It is impressive that she, so young, already possesses such advanced magic. He adds that she probably got really lucky to receive a truly powerful gift, but his face darkened when he told her that she was exactly the person he could not stand. Luna looks him straight in the eyes, finally finds her voice, and asks why he is so obsessed with finding Julius. Luna looks him in the eyes and says she wants to make a deal. She will follow him if he agrees to free her father and again. Achilles suddenly asked if she really meant her father, Lord of the Flanders territory, Eric. A piercing look appears in his eyes as he repeats the name Flanders to himself. Suddenly he realized that this was why the troop deployment was postponed, and began grumbling about some vile scoundrel seeking to expand his power. Luna just stands puzzled, and suddenly it dawns on her. If that's the case, then actually everything was much worse than it seems. Achilles looks like he is about to break, muttering that what is happening is impossible because there is not even a trace of magic. He begins to lose his mind, looking completely out of sorts like he convinces himself that if only he gets rid of this mysterious, uninvited guest right now, then everything will finally return to how it should be. Meanwhile, Luna froze in shock, not believing that someone had really broken through solid steel doors with bare hands. Achilles looks quite nervous. The guy called the God of War clearly feels the pressure, and it turns out his hidden power is the gift of the berserker. He starts clutching his own body when Kit admits that he does not even care about what happened in the tavern, and with a crazy gleam in his eyes, he tells Alma that he would like to beat him to death right here. Alma cannot believe that his own brother would say such a thing. He just stands there, completely stunned like. Kit begins gathering magic and says that he has actually always hated him. Keith loses control, calls him a stupid bastard, and screams for him to die while he throws a huge explosion of energy directly at Alma. But almost does not lose his composure, recognizing the lightning bolt in the movement, and even if it is just a basic spell, he knows that the true power lies in the one who uses it. Keith is delighted with himself, thinking about his title, the Purple Lightning Sorcerer, and that no one dares to touch him, and suddenly he releases a powerful explosion that lights up the entire street. He shines with self-satisfaction. Keith thinks he has finally finished everything, but when the smoke clears, a huge stone slab towers in the middle of the road. It turns out Alma timely used earth magic and raised a stone shield. Keith completely loses his head, loudly asking, how could this child even know how to use earth spells? Alma just remains calm and tells him that he has been secretly training for some time, that This deeply affects Keith because earth magic has a huge advantage over his lightning. He keeps asking when it even started. Keith begins to lose control, saying that he is tired of Alma always behaving like that while he grumbles that his younger brother always gets better results than him. Keith vents, saying how much he hates being compared to his younger brother. He says it just makes him sick. Alma just listens as Keith recalls the moment he found out that she did not receive a special gift from the gods. Keith starts laughing like a real psycho, admitting that learning about his brother's failure gave him insane pleasure. He began gathering energy and, hissing, declared that the family name would be disgraced if a failure like Alma was allowed to live. With a terrifying look, Keith tells the boy that he will finish him off here and now. Alma recognizes the spell Keith is about to use, and anxiety grips her. There are still people nearby. And Keith does not care at all, shouting that he will break through several passers-by if necessary to win. He raises his hand and summons his lightning magic Regan, feeling the power growing. Alma suddenly realizes this thunder spear must pierce his earthly shield directly, and he is already truly panicking. If even one of those bolts misses, innocent people on the street will be blown apart. Keith has a completely wild look in his eyes as he shouts for Alma to burn to ashes, but he releases a huge lightning discharge. A powerful explosion occurs, and stones fly in all directions. From the giant crater left in the middle of the street, smoke rises. Keith just disdainfully burst out laughing at the ruins, thinking the fight was already in his pocket, but when he looked closer, he realized his brother had completely disappeared from the place where he had just shot. Kit begins to lose his temper, shouting and asking where the hell that guy is hiding, and he scans the roofs in wild rage, but he is nowhere to be seen. Alma did appear behind the crowd, whole and unharmed. He managed to push everyone aside and break through. He didn't say a word, quietly cast a teleportation spell, moved everyone to safety, and Keith didn't even notice how he relocated. But saving such a large number of people at once, without saying a word, really starts to exhaust him. Alma looks at the smoking crater and thinks to himself that his brother Kit is truly incredible, but he knows he won't allow any more innocent people to get into this mess. Kit is sweating and looking around like a madman, and Alma tells him that he regrets it, but he has to restrain him now. Alma just stands with folded arms, preparing to cast a spell. Meanwhile, Kit is still standing in the middle of the street, surrounded by lightning, and shouting for Alma to show his face. Alma looks at him and frankly admits the lightning magic of his brother is truly powerful. And even though Kit puts on a big show of strength, a huge loophole opens up. Alma simply appears right behind his back and indifferently says that he is standing right there. Keith sharply turns around, completely stunned, and asks when, damn it, he even ended up behind him, but Alma does not answer him. He only tells Kit that now it is his turn to attack. Kit sharply throws, Alma is an idiot, adding that there is no point in shouting if he is trying to attack by surprise. But Alma simply replies from the roof that he only told him where he was, because in his eyes the fight is already over. Keith raises his eyes in complete shock, barely able to utter a word when Alma activates her earth magic. The ground around completely crumbles. He activates the move, Stone Prison. Giant stone pillars burst from the ground and lock Kit inside. Keith suddenly realizes that he is completely surrounded by a stone wall. He is losing his mind, shouts Alma for her not to look at him condescendingly, trying to break free. Alma does not flinch. He simply adds lightning to his magic and presses the press lock, causing massive stones to slam shut with a crash and crush everything inside. The cat is completely stuck in the stone prison and is going crazy because he does not believe that Alma can use lightning magic too. Alma just looks at him and asks if he noticed what is really happening because it turned out that his own colossal lightning attack earlier magnetized all the minerals underground. Alma explains that he is simply powering his earth magic with his own lightning, so the trap cannot be broken. Alma carries the boy he saved to a safe place while his brother remains stuck. The elders from the village are overwhelmed with gratitude, telling Alma that he is a true savior and thank him again and again. Alma lowers his gaze, feels guilty, and apologizes. He feels that the whole fight is because of him. But the villagers do not let him torment himself. They grab him by the shoulders and tell him to lift his head, reminding him that regardless of how it all started, the truth is that he stepped forward and saved them. Alma heard them and finally smiled slightly, quietly thanking them as the tension began to subside. Kit begins to go crazy in his stone prison, shouting to Alma, "Tell me what's happening." He sharply demands to know when Alma managed to accumulate so much magic at all, and asks if he had been hiding his true power from everyone all this time. Kit plunges into a whirlpool of thoughts, tormented by having let his father down and not living up to the title of sage, then shouts at Alma for her condescending look. He constantly scolds him, demanding an answer, while Alma just stands there, completely crushed. He almost caught himself thinking, when they were younger, Kit constantly boasted about his lightning magic, and explains that it is not only for fighting, it could even be used to move objects around. Back then, Alma sincerely admired him. She believed they were just two brothers who worked hard and competed a little friendly. But looking now at Keith's face, it is clear that his brother feels completely broken. When everything around was changing, Alma dares to take a decisive, fateful step. He leaves the Empire and heads east to escape this continent forever. Alma begs Kit, please, don't chase after him, and immediately clarifies that he is actually heading west. He closes his eyes and mentally repeats, I never want to see that mighty lightning magic of my brother again. Inside, Kit explodes and shouts at the top of his voice that if Alma said west, then he must go east. Kit constantly shouts that Alma is an idiot and that he will track him down and defeat him wherever he goes. Grabbing Alma's smile, he wondered how simple his brother was while he waved and said to him, take care of yourself. Alma walks away, shrinking further into a small figure in the distance, while everyone else just stands still. One of the boys looks stunned and simply says that Alma really left. The scene shifts to a quiet part of the city, where the shopkeeper just hangs around his stall and Alma stands by the horse-drawn carriage with his gear finally ready to set off. The driver points the way out of the city, and Alma prepares to leave his old life behind. Almost settling in the back of the horse carriage that sets off on the road, leaning back while he looks around the carriage interior and smiles mentally for the first time traveling so far by carriage. Right opposite him sits a girl with a ribbon in her hair. She looks very focused and has. When Alma secretly glanced at her face, he suddenly realized he had definitely seen her before in the square. He feels a bit embarrassed because of this coincidence, especially when he notices that she is just staring at him intently, and he is troubled by the thought of whether she is looking at him for some reason. Suddenly, a voice from outside the carriage called for a moment of their attention, catching D. The driver's attention turns to two armored guards who appeared to say that a dangerous sorcerer is supposedly hiding in this area. The chief guard immediately gets down to business and says they need to thoroughly check who is on board here. Alma and the girl both lean forward to see what the commotion is about while the guards begin the inspection. The guard started the check, sharply asking the man in the vest if he had any documents with him. The man calls himself Tristan from the Western Farms and says that the woman next to him is his wife, well, he is almost panicking because he has no documents, and he even starts thinking about teleportation to escape. Before the guard turns his gaze to the back of the carriage and asks the children to tell their story. Alma is about to burst out when suddenly someone shouted, "Brother." That girl with the ribbon, she leans right in front of him and takes the situation into her own hands. She lifts the card, shows it to the guard, and says, "My name is Luna. I am from the territory of West Flanders." And then she directly points to Alma and says that he is just her younger brother. The guard inspects them, and Alma stands sweating, hoping the lie will work. Alma realizes that she is actually saving him probably. This is how she wants to thank him for helping her in the square. The guard finishes the check and tells everyone, "You may proceed." The carriage moves away, finally leaving behind the city castle gates. When they finally find themselves in safety, Alma turns to Luna and says, "You really pulled him out of trouble." And then he, as is proper, introduced himself as Alma and said that he had seen her earlier in the square. Luna was a little embarrassed and quietly muttered an apology for what had happened between them earlier. Alma simply sighed deeply, admitting that the whole situation had terribly unnerved him. But then everything becomes strange. Glowing squares and lines began to hover around him. Meanwhile, Luna is just staring straight ahead, and suddenly a piercing look flashes in her eyes. Alma caught a barely audible whisper from her, as if she said the word teleport. He notices that she is definitely mumbling something under her breath just before everything changes. Luna mumbles under her breath, completely stunned that someone managed to cast high-level spatial magic on an entire group without uttering a single spell, and keeps repeating what a bunch of different spells it was and what insanely precise intuition was needed to pull it off. She looks thoughtfully, pondering what it would mean if this person. The carriage drove onto a rough patch of road, and she suddenly shouted, "Alma." Luna turns to him with a serious look and says she has a request for him. Alma does not look too shocked and simply tells her that he actually expected her to bring it up, but he still repeats favor in response, slightly uncertain, waiting for her to continue. Luna just looks him straight in the eyes, more determined than ever, and says his name once again. Without unnecessary words, she directly tells him that she wants him to return with her to her territory. Alma is clearly puzzled by the sudden invitation and asks her with surprise, why him specifically? Luna simply lowers her eyes and, gathering herself, begins to explain that it is because of something very important. Luna looks him straight in the eyes and says that she has a job that only a person with his skills can pull off. He almost puts the puzzle together in his head and says that this exactly explains why she took such a risk saving him from those guards earlier. That comment catches Luna by surprise, and they both remain looking at each other in complete confusion. She panics a little, waves her hands, and swears that she did not mean at all that this job was some kind of exchange for helping him. Alma could not get rid of the feeling that asking for this right now was clearly a bit unfair. Especially when Luna lowers her gaze, her cheeks burning with shame, and mumbles that she actually just wanted to repay him for what he did for her. He actually finds it very funny, starts laughing until she asks what's going on, but in his heart he has already decided he will help her. But he must remember, people are chasing him. If those pursuers catch up to him, they will bring a lot of trouble right to Luna's doorstep. She, as if sensing his hesitation, looks a little upset and admits that the invitation was quite sudden. She gently says that he does not need to rush if he has other matters, he should resolve them first. He sits almost silently in the carriage thinking about one thing. Finally, there is something he truly wants to do. This reminds him how in a past life he decided to train to madness and master magic all just so that this time he could finally become happy. But looking back, he realizes he never truly understood what to do with all that power. So he decides to simply ask Luna, what does happiness really mean to her? Luna is a bit confused by this random question and, surprised, asks why he suddenly brought it up. Alma tells her it's just for reference, and she freezes for a moment, pondering. When she finally answered and said it was family, Alma couldn't hide her complete astonishment at such a simple answer. She enthusiastically talks about how much she likes the people at home, in Flanders, and admits that her greatest hope is for friends and relatives to always be happy. She looks at him and asks if that answers his question, and he freezes a little at how clear her intentions are. Alma reflected on her words and repeated once more that she is happy when her family is happy, and he smiled and said that it is truly a wonderful way to live. Suddenly, Tristan from the opposite end of the carriage spoke up, saying he knows Alma had a hard time because of his older brother. They both froze for a moment, so Tristan apologizes and says he couldn't help but overhear their conversation. His face becomes serious. He admits that he does not know all the details of what happened, but he finally just goes out and asks if it is true that Alma was actually kicked out of his own home. The carriage fell silent, and Tristan asks aloud, could it be that this whole trip is just so Alma can take revenge? Alma looks at his palms, clenches them tightly, and admits that he is truly disappointed with how everything turned out. He explains that although he was betrayed and had everything he worked for taken away, something still keeps him from moving on. Because he does not want to harm the place where he grew up and the people who live there, no matter what. Luna just looks at him with a gentle smile, as if saying she knew it from the very beginning, because he is simply too kind. Alma lowers his gaze, admitting that he simply lacks the courage to carry out revenge, so he apologizes to Luna, explains that he needs some time to process her request, and asks if she can give him one night to think about it. Luna says she understands everything, and asks him to just tell her tomorrow what he decides, while the carriage rolls on. Alma looks at her and thanks her for being so patient, and while the two of them sit there, he assures her that by morning he will definitely have a final answer. Meanwhile at the estate, Kit is going crazy and loudly calling for his father. He is trembling with rage, demanding that his father finally give him permission to go out and deal with Alma. And at that very moment, a maid entered the room to inform him about the situation, and she tells him that the Lord himself ordered Alma to be brought back home. Kit is in complete shock. Everything turned upside down because the rumor spread. It turned out that Kit actually lost to Alma in their confrontation. Lord Fellow is sitting in the library, considering how insanely high Alma's power level could actually raise the family's reputation, even if the child has no gift, and in the corridor, Kit completely loses his mind, clenching his fists so hard that he himself is trembling. Just repeat. He kept repeating to himself how much this whole situation, in his opinion, was complete rubbish. He understands if Alma really returns home, everything will go back to how it was, or maybe even worse for him. So he looks back at the maid with a grim expression and begins to weave a lie, saying he is heading east, but then he stops and gives her a clear message, insisting that his father hears exactly what he has to say. Today Kit tells her to report that Alma is heading west into the familiar's territory, and the maid simply nods and says she understands. Kit stands there, sweaty and incredibly tense, as the reality of the situation begins to sink in because he knows he has just crossed the red line, officially conspiring against his own father. He thinks about the mess he has with the plan, but at the same time is satisfied because now only he knows that Alma is actually heading east. Keith clenches his fist near his heart, thinking to himself that there is truly no turning back from the choice he just made, and he smiles sinisterly, thinking about how he will make Alma pay for all the humiliations he has endured recently. He walks down the corridor, laughing like a villain, unaware that his forged report was actually 100 accurate about Alma's route, so the family pursuer really is on Alma's trail and is heading west, just as Kit said. But since Kit thinks he lied, he sets off alone to the east, wandering in search of a brother who is not there at all. Soon attention shifts away from the family drama because Alma is already making his way to the next major stop on his journey, a place called Talistella. It is a huge trading city. The streets are teeming with people, and market stalls are everywhere you look. And as soon as he steps inside, Alma throws a pile of coins on the counter to pay for a place to spend the night. The man behind the counter tells him that everything is ready, a room at the end of the corridor for one night. Alma stands in his new room and thinks about how he just gave the innkeeper 2,000 gold, and he only has about 1,000 left. So he understands, after abandoning the empire, stopping here in the trading city of Talistella was practically his only choice. He begins to get nervous. If he doesn't find a way to earn money quickly, his entire journey will reach a dead end. But the problem is that if his family has already sent people to look for him, he cannot afford the luxury of wasting time on long adventures. Almost stands by the window and thinks about whether he should just find some dungeon and dive into it. He instantly dismisses this thought. He does not believe that a dungeon with such treasures could be somewhere here. When he says treasure aloud, suddenly a memory from a past life clicks. He raises his hand, everything begins to change, and he focuses energy, awakens spatial magic, and shouts the skill item box. A black cube suddenly appears above his palm, and at the same moment, a digital menu with a welcome message begins to load. Then he glances at the newly opened dimensional space, impatiently ready to see what he has hidden there. Alma watches as his storage responds to mana. The size of the box really depends on the user's magical power, so everyone. He checks the contents and breathes a sigh of relief. It turns out everything from his old life arrived safely. In his past life, he always relied on this box of things in the toughest moments, but he never imagined it would come in handy right now. The bed is covered with a pile of materials from monsters and rare parts, and because of this everything. Alma thinks that by selling some of this, he will finally solve all his money problems once and for all, but as soon as he scrolls further through the list and slowly realizes, it seems he has a small problem. Some things here are just too crazy. His inventory is filled with legendary items, such as the dragon god's sword and the sea god's spear, and he knows, if he lets go of even one of these, it will cause a complete disaster. He chooses one item and almost hopes that showing it here is no big deal. He convinces himself that it is just an ordinary material obtained during monster hunting, so it should be safe, but suddenly the truth about his power surfaced. He actually cannot shoot magic like everyone else, so instead he converts all that inner magic into pure physical energy. When he was growing up, everyone thought he was a complete failure because he couldn't cast spells, but he still became a legend only with his fighting skills. He earned the title of God of War by brute force alone. At that moment, he anxiously looked around and asked himself if it was already too late to stop what was happening. Luna feels the situation rapidly worsening. She tells herself, I must immediately retreat and create distance between them. She jumps back as the floor shatters into pieces from the impact. Achilles is not impressed at all, just grumbling that using teleportation again is not original at all. And Luna just stands there, completely shocked at how fast he moves. The knights watching the fight completely lose their heads. One says he just disappeared, another is stunned that Lord Achilles can even teleport, but the reality is much crazier. He doesn't use magic at all, he just jumps with such speed that the human eye can't even keep up, and he crashes down with a powerful blow aimed directly at Luna. She is rooted to the ground and looks up while the air around him literally explodes from the force of his movement. Luna begins to panic. She knows she is in trouble. She thinks about dodging or teleporting, but realizes she simply can't make it in time. Just as the blow was about to hit, something blocks the attack and sends a shockwave through the air, smashing the ground and stopped Achilles in his tracks. He is completely stunned, eyes wide open, trying to comprehend what just happened. A mysterious figure in a black cloak towers amid the chaos. Achilles is thrown back through the debris, and the knights only watch in awe. The person who just saved her. Luna lifts her head from the floor and slowly begins to realize who exactly came to her aid. Achilles now looks very concerned. He just saw his opponent, and Julius is simply standing there in a mask, completely calm despite the fight. Achilles finally exposes him. The man who just appeared is none other than the great sage Julius himself. Julius stands with his back to the chaos and has just received a report from Messenger Edwards. It turned out his guest caused quite a lot of trouble, and Achilles himself can't believe he calls her a guest. Julius does not believe this version and tells Achilles directly that most of this destruction looks like it happened when he lost control and wildly destroyed everything around. Looking at the huge hole in the stone, Julius said he would simply pay for all repairs and damages out of his own pocket. He tells the stunned knights that he will handle the paperwork himself. He will just record the entire battle as an accident during training. And he even offers medical help, saying that soldiers who are wounded or in shock can come later for treatment. He glances at the general and asks if there is anything else to settle before they finish with this. Achilles barely smiled and said, "No, that's all," and immediately the soldiers began packing their things. The entire army marches in perfect ranks, leaving the courtyard empty, as if Luna raises her eyes to her savior, and Julius quietly utters her name. Julius suggested going to a more private place and continuing the conversation in his room. When they settled in, he asks if her main goal is for Erica to be released and reinstated to govern the Flanders territory. Luna does not hesitate and says that is exactly what she wants, although Julius simply leaned back and thought for a second, leaving Luna standing there under pressure. She looks at the man opposite her, remembering that this is the great sage Julius, and she begins to worry about what it would be like to serve him. He is the strongest mage in the kingdom and known as a completely ruthless prime minister, so she cannot help but imagine what crazy things such a guy would make her do. Despite the fear, she tightly clutches her dress and whispers to herself that she will save her father, and she is ready for anything to make it happen, even if she has to get her hands dirty. His voice breaks the silence. Julius suddenly asks, "Do you really think I am some kind of demon?" Luna almost jumped out of her skin when she realized she had spoken those thoughts aloud, but Julius simply told her to stop making such a scary face. After all, this deal is good for her too. Julius looks straight at Luna and reminds her of what he said earlier. He is actually not interested in her as a person, but in reality, he is hunting for her hidden talents. He looks at her from under the mask, forcing. This made Luna raise her eyes to him in complete surprise and ask why he even needed something like that. So Julius leans forward and begins to explain exactly what his goal is. He tells her that. Luna's eyes widen, she freezes and barely squeezes out a sound after his demand. Next to her, a man sweats and loses his head, asking if he really just heard her say that. He quickly announces that the troop deployment to Flanders is cancelled. Lord Eric will be released, and instead only a few advisors will be sent to oversee the situation. Julius stands there with Luna in the middle of a huge hall and explains that although this is part of the matter, it is not exactly what he was talking about. He pauses for a moment, then brings up the topic of the child and confirms, yes, everything is progressing. The scene ends with him roughly saying her full name aloud, Luna from the Flanders territory, standing there like a shadow. Julius shocked everyone by announcing that he intends to take Luna as his wife, because of which. This makes Edward sweat and look completely confused when he asks if Julius is really serious. Luna just stands in complete silence, eyes wide open, trying to understand what just happened. She barely utters words, stumbling over the wedding, and does not take her eyes off the table in front of her. Unable to bear it, Luna sharply tells him, "Shut up," thinking what a pervert he is, and recalling Sanny's warning, she shouts that she is already an adult, even naming her height as proof, but Julius does not give up. Coldly and stubbornly says that he is only interested in her power and wants to keep her under his control. Luna looks down and seems to ask, is this power really worth risking her father and the whole house? She stubbornly looks him in the eyes, wondering why he so desperately wants to obtain such power. Julia simply says, the ceremony is tomorrow, and leaves Luna alone in her room where she sits and thinks. Julius looked out the window at the dark sky and, as if apologizing, told Luna that it was already late, so he was sending someone to escort her to her room for the night. Walking through the corridors, Luna suddenly realizes Julius is definitely just using the marriage to take control of her magic. Luna walks with her head down, looking completely unhappy. Edward clearly sees that she is having a very hard time processing this news. He looked at her and told her to stop frowning like that. Maybe there is a silver lining in all of this. Edward explains that although he understands why she is upset about the forced marriage, in reality, it is a huge opportunity that most nobles would kill for, and it leaves. He leaves Luna confused, continuing to say that she will have more power than most nobles and full access to all the palace's luxurious baths and huge gardens covered with flowers, but what impresses her the most is that he mentions the royal library, full of rare magical books. The thought of all those magical volumes makes Luna hesitate, and she begins to wonder that maybe being stuck here is not so bad after all. Edward adds one more detail: he doesn't believe Julius is over 60, yet he still looks so cool. Luna completely loses her mind and shouts that it's impossible, but Edward confirms. He was already prime minister back when he was just starting out as an adventurer. Edward looks down with a serious expression, sifting through memories. He asks Julius if something is wrong, and Julius, staring out the window, quietly says no, he's just thinking about why people need power at all. Edward admits that he himself does not fully understand Julius's true intentions, but recalls an old moment when Julius, looking at a painting, said something. Julius clenches a letter in his hand, and Edward remembers his words: he has a promise that must be fulfilled. Suddenly, someone's voice echoed through the corridors. Someone was loudly shouting at someone else not to touch them. The boy tells Julius that the soldiers have long been ready to depart. He is raging with fury after all the delays. Julius cancels everything just to marry some young girl. The boy with a mark on his forehead moved close to Julius and angrily asked, "Do you even realize how many problems you're causing everyone?" Julius remains completely calm and tells him that he is sure this is the right step for the future of the kingdom. The boy just snorted and said that from his point of view, this is just an old man who is finally losing his mind. Julius clearly makes it known, this matter is closed. He tells everyone that the ceremony is today and nothing can change that. He extends his hand, offers an invitation, and sincerely says that he really wants them to come to the big event. While Luna just stands there, completely confused, especially since Achilles behind her has collapsed to the floor. Achilles struggles to get up, tries to tell Julia that he didn't finish speaking, but he just starts quietly laughing to himself, mumbling that she is now completely alone, and this makes Luna freeze completely. Dark energy surged from Achilles. He bent over in pain, and it seems that strange horn is breaking through again. Turns out his berserker gift is a double-edged sword that causes all his magic to get stuck inside his body. Julius looks around grimly and says that such raw power inevitably brings disgusting consequences. The boy's emotions are off the charts, and his inner magic is completely out of control. Unlike everyone who naturally releases magic, Achilles is a real walking bomb because he cannot release that energy. It turns out all that magical power accumulating inside a person starts to damage their own nerves and right now the god of war is officially going insane. Achilles stands there looking like a monster. He mumbles as if he really hears a voice inside his own head. Luna and Lord Fellows both look completely shocked. As this happens, the atmosphere here is totally different. Achilles finally loses control and screams at the top of his lungs for everything to just shatter into pieces. He lunged forward, shouting at Julius "die" and calling him a pervert. Behind the mask, Julius calmly tells the boy that he misunderstood and everything is not like that at all. Luna looks at them and suddenly realizes this is turning into a nightmare. If Julius really rushes into battle with the god of war head-on, then almost certainly one of them will end very badly. She reaches out her hand and clings to Julius's cloak, calls him, and is not sure if it is even worth trying to stop this. Achilles feels that he has hit rock bottom, thinking that he could have just married and gotten this territory if not for Flanders and Julius. He knows that he was once saved, but even with all his strength, it seems to him that everything is slipping right out of his hands. In the very vortex, Julius put his hands forward and shouted to everyone, "Do nothing." Behind his mask is a deadly serious look. He is preparing to show a unique move that no one expected. He clasped his hands together, summoned powerful magic that affects the surrounding environment, and the air around instantly changed. A powerful explosion or blade cuts through the air and completely catches Achilles by surprise. He stands in total shock. A piercing scream tore through the air, and Luna instantly looked back, wondering, was it Achilles or someone else? Everything was happening so rapidly that she barely kept up with the chaos unfolding right before her. Luna tries to process what just happened, but then begins to feel a miserable atmosphere that is strangely familiar. She remembers how she used her own magic to lead everyone into the palace, but it seems their luck has just run out. Alma looks around at the chaos and anxiously says that the atmosphere is becoming increasingly tense. Luna stands stunned, shouting "Alma," as everything around begins to collapse. He keeps himself together and, as if casually, calls her to keep her attention on how to survive. On the other side, Edward almost loses his head. He is tormented by the question, How did the villain get past the castle barriers, or do they just teleport and appear out of nowhere? He quickly stops overthinking and decides that the exact method no longer matters. Alma locks eyes on her target, clearly signaling, this man is his prey, only his. He approaches Luna and says with relief that he is glad she is okay, especially after hearing she got into serious trouble. But before they can catch their breath, Luna shouts his name again, and right in front of Alma's face, a powerful shockwave tears through the air. The force was so heavy that the ground beneath him literally shattered into pieces, and he barely managed to hold on to withstand the impact. He looks with wide-open eyes at the ruins and suddenly realizes the power he is dealing with is a completely different level. The moon just stands all anxious, quietly whispering Alma, watching the fight. Finally, he was recognized Almaphalus, the very guy they whisper about having serious connections with the Empire. People begin to understand that he is the same mysterious guy who gave Lord Eric the super-rare Flanders artifact, making him E. This makes him an even bigger target, and Edward watches all this with a self-satisfied expression on his face. The giant attacking him boils with irritation no matter how much he hits. Alma does not react at all. This is magic he has never encountered. He tries to throw a few fake attacks to catch him off guard, but those don't work either, and he wonders, does the barrier automatically block every strike? The attacker looks him straight in the eyes and throws a real question. If the shield is so perfect, how can he even stand on the ground? Suddenly the guy stops hitting the shield and punches the floor directly, shattering the ground all around. Catching Alma off guard, he suddenly feels the support vanish from under his feet. The floor crumbles beneath him, but then that guy throws simple logic. He says that if he really blocks absolutely everything, then he won't even have anything to breathe. The attacker pressed his face close to Alma's with a creepy smile and asked if his barrier just reacts to the kinetic force of objects. Alma looks very upset as the guy begins to very slowly move his hand toward him and says that is exactly why he is going to He slips his hand through the shield like this. He behaves as if he is just gently patting the old man on the back. He is confident if he grabs him slowly enough, the barrier won't even notice that it has to stop him. The boy stands over a huge crater that he made himself, looking down at Alma, who is still stuck in the pit, and suddenly he loses control, grabbed his own hand, and shouts that something crazy is happening to his body. Alma watches as this guy starts puffing and realizes the shield just automatically counterattacked and is already doing its job. But suddenly Alma notices someone else and calls General Achilles. This completely throws the attacker off balance. Achilles stands, looking calm behind the mask, and simply asks the giant if he has finally managed to calm down a bit. The attacker sharply replies, "How can I be calm when my hand is literally smoking right in front of me?" Achilles reminds the boy that he was the one who started the fight first, and the attacker shouts back that anyone would fight back against an uninvited guest. Achilles remains calm and says that Alma is also his guest, and this only angers the giant more. He tells Achilles to stop acting as if he won rock, paper, scissors retroactively, and finally decides that enough is enough and walks away, shouting that that's it, he doesn't care anymore. One of the knights is clearly concerned and asks Achilles if it is really okay to just let that man go. Achilles is not worried at all. He simply says that the plan to stop the deployment is now official, and the attacker retreats, grumbling irritably. The big guy admits to himself he can still handle one monster, but not two at the same time. The knight behind him is completely confused. He doesn't understand which two monsters he is talking about, but then he looks at Alma and begins to piece everything together. The air in the room seems to tighten when someone realizes that Julius has two of these insanely strong fighters on his side. The attacker clenched his smoking hand and promised himself that he would avenge today's wounds. Meanwhile, the tension subsides. Achilles returns to Luna's group and begins with apologies for all the madness that just happened. The man in the mask solemnly introduces himself to everyone as Julius, but he is not just some nobleman throughout the kingdom. He is known as a great sage. Alma freezes for a second in surprise, but quickly pulls himself together and says that now he knows who he is really dealing with. Realizing that this is exactly the legendary figure he has recently heard about in all the rumors. Julius does not waste time. He asks directly and without any hesitation what brought them all the way here at such an hour. Alma instantly falls to one knee, apologizing for the unexpected visit, and explains that he is here to speak on behalf of the territory of Flanders. They make it clear, if it comes to a fight they are ready, but they much more want to just talk. He is actually quite glad that that boy's family raised him with so many manners. He remains polite even when everything is so tense. Julius just stares back, repeating a bit skeptically that Alma is there to tell his version of events. Alma does not back down and tells him the truth, the entire conspiracy against Lord Eric is just false accusations. Alma remains restrained and professional, explaining that neither Lord Eric nor the villagers harbor hostility towards the kingdom. To prove the seriousness of his intentions for peace, he gives a rare treasure that the village has guarded. He displays an exquisite bullet on a stand, although secretly admits to himself that he just grabbed it from his collection, and Julius doesn't even look at it before saying that the gift is not needed because. This leaves Alma completely puzzled. Julius explains that, although it is a nice gesture, the whole conflict has already been resolved by another agreement. He made everyone freeze when he announced that Luna is actually marrying him. Alma just froze, jaw dropped. He cannot comprehend that they are marrying so suddenly. Edward steps forward and explains, by joining the family of the kingdom's most influential official, the territory of Flanders and its lord will finally be safe, no more troubles. He even says that Lord Eric has already been released from prison and is now accepted as an honored guest. Meanwhile, Eric sits alone, completely broken, and only quietly whispers Luna's name. Raoul does not fall for this and bursts out screaming, saying that they are actually just exchanging Eric's life for Luna's freedom. He does not stop. He shouts that this marriage should not even be legal, and those standing nearby were almost stunned by this. Julius waved off Raoul's shouting and calmly said that such thoughts happen to people sooner or later they come out. He explains that political marriages for profit happen constantly and stubbornly insists that this engagement is completely voluntary for everyone. They even added that the whole process is carried out strictly according to the laws of the kingdom. He turns his attention back to her and asks Luna, "Isn't that true?" Alma just looks at her, barely whispering her name and waiting for an answer. Meanwhile, Luna just stands there, eyes full of tears, looking completely broken. Finally, she finds her voice and addresses Alma and Raoul. She sincerely thanked them for coming all the way here just for her. Deep down, she stubbornly convinces herself that everything is fine, although she herself does not really understand why she feels that way. She tells herself, if I marry the great sage, father and everyone at home will finally be safe. Luna dreams about how the kingdom's help will finally allow her territory to expand, and although she has known Alma and Raoul for only a few months. Alma's face is the only thing on her mind right now. She tries to convince herself that if everyone else is happy, then everything is fine. Everything is fine, their smiles are the only happiness for her. Alma just looks at her, appearing quite worried, while he whispers her name under his breath. Julius breaks the silence and announces that the wedding will take place tomorrow. He says with a smile to the group that they are invited as friends of Luna and that his people will prepare rooms for them. He looks at Luna and says that she must be very tired, advising her to go and rest while everything. Alma watches her leave, and the weight of the situation finally sinks in for him. Later, Luna stands alone in a quiet room, gazing at the huge wedding dress. She whispered to herself one last time that the happiness of others is all that matters to her. Luna lies in the dark with a scarf on her head, completely exhausted. Thoughts keep her restless, and she does not understand why she couldn't simply say what needed to be said. Then he begins to doubt himself, thinking that it might be so rare that no one in the whole city would even know how to appraise it. Alma decided, why not take a risk? He looked at the piece of monster in his hand and decided that tomorrow morning he would simply go to the local guild as soon as it opens. He pauses for a moment by the window and watches as the sun begins to set and birds fly past the nearby houses. Next to Luna, she is simply lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, with a bunch of thoughts in her head. She whispered the word tomorrow, clearly thinking about what the next day would bring. The next morning, the Talistella Adventurers Guild is already buzzing with hustle and bustle. People are gathering, trading, and taking on quests. Alma enters and immediately notices how crowded it is here. No wonder. This town is a major crossroads for people from different countries. He started looking for a place where materials are bought, but was so distracted that he just ran into someone. The giant head of the monster hit the floor with a dull thud, and Alma immediately began apologizing for all this mess. The adventurer he hit groans on the ground, and Alma keeps saying she's sorry, realizing that he just knocked down a boy and dropped his loot. After the collision, Alma looks very worried and asks the boy if he is okay. The traveler just chuckles, sweating under the weight of his loot, and says that he is the one who should apologize. His heavy load blocked his view of the child. Alma looked closely and immediately noticed the boy seems to be almost his age, and he is wearing some simple, cheap-looking things that immediately show he is a complete novice, just received his gift. He notices a fresh scratch on the boy's face and involuntarily wonders if he got it in a fight with some monster. Then Alma bows his head and apologetically says that he is sorry he dirtied the boy's monster materials on the floor. The boy says it's okay, saying that the boar he hunted was an old fierce beast anyway. and introduces himself as Raoul, a traveler, smiling friendly while, and at the same time said that Alma is definitely not from this part of the city. Alma introduces himself and explains that he is just looking for a place to sell some monster materials he is carrying. Raoul gave a thumbs up, smiled, and said he was heading to the same place, offering to show the boy the way. While they were walking, Raoul couldn't believe his ears. Alma came all the way from Alistella, and Alma admits that on the road he actually ran out of money. Raoul looks a bit tired from carrying the loot and asks if this is really Alma's first visit to the guild, and then he can't help but ask if Alma really intends to sign up to become a full-time adventurer. Somewhat puzzled by how Raoul asked this, but quickly explains that he didn't come to join the guild. He decided to just quickly sell his materials for cash and then immediately go to familiar territory, thinking that. He says that it's a cool idea, but suddenly notices that Raoul looks quite nervous and asks if something is wrong. Raoul tries to act naturally and explains that this guild is too overcrowded for its size, which complete chaos has formed in the hierarchy among the members, and lately this has been causing Raoul a lot of problems. Raoul admits that if Alma really wanted to join, he would try his best to talk him out of it, and this makes Alma realize that. Who would have thought Raoul is actually a very nice guy? But then the older man looks around and notices that Alma looks a bit broken. He thinks that the guy dragging the boar behind him has been badly hurt by it, and then someone says that Alma's body is covered with bruises, and the boy only nervously makes a sound. Raoul just smiled and waved it off. He says these bruises are not from hunting, and he himself doesn't really know how to explain it. Moving forward, Raoul notices the destination and points to the receptionist waiting behind the counter. The woman at the desk looked up, glanced at them, and asked if they came to sell some materials from monsters. She keeps everything professional and asks Alma if he has his official guild card with him. It turned out that the guild only takes goods from registered members, so Raoul stood in the background looking very awkward. The receptionist says she can inspect his belongings today, but only if he finishes registration first. Alma realizes that he really doesn't want to get involved with all that adventurous social ladder and all that irritating drama, but he increasingly feels that there is almost no choice, and at that moment, Raoul touches his shoulder too. He winked to get his attention, and smiling, told the receptionist that he would just lend the boy his registration card for the exchange. He pretends to be calm, tells Alma that he can just sell monster parts under his own name because the woman behind the counter won't remember every face that comes in. But Alma just looks at him with such an uncertain expression, she feels uneasy that he is trying to pull something off right in front of her. Turned out he was really right to worry. The receptionist immediately spoke up. She says she hears every word they say because they are talking too loudly, and all that. Alma just stands and asks them to move such suspicious conversations somewhere else next time, and he can't help but think that Raoul is really the worst at being inconspicuous. Raoul finally sighs with relief when she says that it's actually not against the rules because the one who really obtained them is standing right here. She slams the stamp on the papers a loud bang, says to go to the warehouse where the pros will inspect everything immediately, so they head there. Go to the end where massive parts of the beast are tied and hanging from the ceiling. The appraiser begins to check the quality and notes that a regular wild boar usually costs about 5,000 gold, but this trophy is a completely different matter. The appraiser scans the hall with his gaze and tells Raoul that because there are too many boars on the market this year, the tusks and nails together will bring only 3,500 gold. Raoul leans back with a smile and says that he will be quite satisfied if that covers a few upcoming lunches. The old man just sighs and notes that Raoul, as always, is a man without a shred of greed. He is still scrutinizing the prey, constantly saying that the boar looks quite battered and that the whole matter, honestly, is a complete mess, so he looks. He looks Raoul straight in the eyes and asks, "Why don't you finally take on bigger monsters instead of wasting time on these small ones?" He tells Raoul that his skills are clearly sufficient to handle much tougher fights, but Raoul just smiled and waved it off, asking the old man not to worry about him and better to look at what Alma is doing. The appraiser shifts his gaze to the boy, but does not understand at all. He says it all looks like Alma is just standing and playing with his hands. Alma doesn't even look up, just tells them to wait a second, has almost finished selecting, and the other two just watched, completely puzzled. It turns out they don't even see the transparent magic board that Alma is working with. As if suddenly pulling a strange black cube out of the air, from which liquid drips, and the appraiser and Raoul just stand, stunned, and Raoul starts losing his mind, shouting where that thing came from, and if it's some kind of trick, but Alma just tells him that it is definitely not a trick. The expert leans closer, eyes wide. He realizes that the boy is actually using the legendary box. He grabbed Alma by the shoulders and shouted that this was madness for a person of his age to create magic of such a high level, while the other two just stood there, looking puzzled. When Alma asks if magic is really such a big deal, the old man explodes and yells at him for not understanding anything at all. The appraiser explains, the very presence of a box with items is a guaranteed ticket. Raoul is burning with excitement and tells Alma that he is even more incredible than he imagined himself. Alma tries to downplay everything, saying it's just a useful skill and that he is probably useless in business, but the appraiser interrupts him. He froze and is looking at the things Alma just took out. Raoul just glances at the things on the table and immediately starts shouting because he can't believe it. He can't believe his own eyes. In front of him is a real tale of a fire dragon and its scales, and the expert adds that in the pile there is even a loincloth of a demon general and several obsidian bear fangs. Alma caught the appraiser's gaze and immediately understood. The items he pulled out are not at all what is usually seen here. He started scratching his head and aloud wondered if those materials might really not be worth so much money. The appraiser and Raoul simultaneously exploded and shouted right in his face that he is an idiot because the truth is completely the opposite of what he thinks. The old man demands explanations why the boy carries so many rare things that can't even be found on the market. Raoul notes that the fire dragon is an extremely great threat, and Alma just nods while they shout. The appraiser keeps saying that the fire dragon is so dangerous that low-level hunters would burn to ashes just standing nearby, and then suddenly the old man throws everything down and begs Alma, let the guild buy everything here and now. He starts mumbling that he knows Alma will probably visit several shops to see who will give him the best price, because he is too. He is terrified. If he misses this one chance, he will never see these things again, so Alma simply says she doesn't mind let him sell them to them. The appraiser can't believe his luck and shouts to make sure the guy is really serious about this deal. So Alma tells him it's okay, as long as this guy stops writhing on the floor like a madman. The appraiser, wiping his eyes, suddenly gets very emotional and promises Alma a great price if he just has a minute to finish the work. So the old man leans over the table, putting all his strength and attention into carefully examining the rare materials. Raoul completely loses it, and with his mouth agape, shouts the final amount to $5 million. He tells Alma that he has never seen so much money in one place before, and Alma can hardly believe it either. Looking at the report, Alma realized only one single piece of material is worth a fortune, which means that what was in his box turned out to be much more expensive than he thought, so he decided to keep silent about his past. The appraiser says that an eternity has passed since he last dealt with something of such quality, especially since the moment when. Since it was kept in a box for belongings, where it remained in perfect condition, the old man, just looking at it, begins to sob again. He pushes both of them to the registration desk with a report he doesn't have that amount of cash on him, so everyone. Alma politely bows and sincerely thanks him for helping with the appraisal. The appraiser turned away, his voice caught, and he whispered to Alma that he was actually the one who should be thanked. But suddenly the receptionist shouts the price $2.5 million, and the entire guild freezes, not believing their eyes. Since the money will have to wait, the guys go to eat, and Raoul feels a bit awkward that Alma is paying for his lunch. But Alma reassures him, don't worry, without you this appraisal could not have gone so well. Alma even offers to pay the commission for him, but Raoul simply asks to drop the formalities and call him by his name. They are peers after all. They sit at the table, finishing their plates and just killing time, while the people from the guild count that huge pile of money. Raoul, while chewing, starts bombarding with questions where Alma got such expensive materials and whether he really fought that monster himself. Alma understands that she cannot just open up and tell the truth that he is a reincarnated prodigy, so she decides to keep her past a secret. I told Raoul a made-up story that his parents, after kicking him out of the house, gave him those things as a farewell gift. Raoul got caught on the hook and looks very sad, telling Alma that it seems he has really gone through a lot of hardships. Raoul was tormented because he interfered, sincerely apologized for the rudeness, and Alma just waved it off as if nothing had happened. He says that now he is even glad that his parents kicked him out of the house. Raoul throws a glance at him and laughs a little, telling Alma that he is really very strong. He noted that having such a positive outlook on things is strength in itself. He looks away for a moment and admits that he would like to have the same strength. Alma notices something and asks if it is related to the bruises she sees on Raoul's body. This caught Raoul by surprise, and he admitted that the old man in the shop said the same thing. Supposedly, he can't handle stronger enemies. He honestly admits his fear. His body just starts trembling every time he meets someone better than himself. You can't say that he has no chance to win or that he is not ready for the fight, but But as soon as he starts thinking that the enemy is stronger or that he might lose his nerves, immediately take over. Raoul explains that his body just freezes, and he becomes so stiff that he literally cannot move. Scratching his head, he sadly admitted that perhaps being an adventurer was not for him, but almost stops him on the spot, saying that if he is considered strong, then Raoul is definitely strong too. The comment suddenly threw Raoul off track, and he stood there in complete shock like. Alma tells him that he is one of the best people she has ever met, especially after helping strangers all day. He notes that being such a person is not easy for most. Any group dreaming of assembling a truly powerful team would be incredibly lucky to have someone like Raoul nearby. Alma recalls that he was always a loner. Even in his past life, he never truly had his own company, but he turns to Raoul again, explaining that sensitivity to danger is actually what makes a warrior good. He finished with the words, "Adventurers who do not know how to retreat in time eventually die." Alma looks him straight in the eyes and confidently says, Raoul will one day become a top-level adventurer. And he even says he will personally vouch for him. Raoul just looks back. You can see how much it touched him. He thanked him for the compliment and mentally felt that Alma had such a vibe that he seemed much older than their generation. Alma suddenly realizes it's really true. He lived 100 years in his previous life, so now he is already over 100 years old. Both froze for a moment in the guild, but then, suddenly a voice of some guy cut through the room, mockingly asking how such a small one like him feels. A group of rough guys enters as if they are the owners of this place, and immediately, Raoul begins to look quite tense, and Alma just stands trying to understand what is happening here. Until this huge guy with a deep scar on his face stops right in front of them, looming over. He looked at both of them, then lowered his eyes and casually greeted Raoul. Raoul looks very confused, calls the huge Evan, and tries to explain that he was actually about to pay for this month any moment now, but Evan just waved it off for now, and Raoul was left standing there completely puzzled, not understanding what the guy really wants. He shifts his gaze to Alma and says he heard about the guy who brought a ton of stuff to the shop today. And he enthusiastically says that even outside the guild they talk about him, and Raoul only awkwardly agrees. A truly self-satisfied expression appeared on Evan's face, and he told them that this guild lives by certain rules, namely that let all adventurers here pay a fee so they can lend each other a shoulder when things get tough. He leaned closer to Alma and said that since he is new here, he would have to shell out the registration fee now. He slammed his hand on their table and loomed over their lunch to make them understand he was not joking. His face twisted, he looked angrily at Raoul and asked, "What the hell are you doing hanging out with this guy?" But Alma only smiled slightly, met his gaze, and told Evan directly that he was completely wrong about how everything would go. Raoul rushed to save the situation and shouted to the bandits that Alma was not even an adventurer, he was just a client using the guild today. He is not a member, so there is absolutely no reason to pay these fake fees. Evan did not like this at all, his face twisted, and he told Raoul that he was really asking for it now. He grabbed Raoul by the head, mockingly teasing him for showing off just because they earned a little, and said it was time for another beating. Raoul shouted to Alma, "Run," but the kid just stood there, completely confused and not understanding what these guys were even talking about. And right then, the girl behind the counter shouted loudly across the room, "There was a mistake in the papers, Alma must come to the counter immediately." She looked at him sternly, and it was clear she was trying to find him an excuse so he could step away from this mess. Raoul stands up, the chair creaks on the floor, and he says to Alma, "Go already, I'll stay, I need to finish one thing." He friendly pats the guy on the shoulder, throws a quick smile, and says he'll see him later. When the tension finally broke, Evan and the team rushed to the exit, the heavy doors slammed shut behind them. He almost froze in place, completely stunned, while the receptionist avoids his gaze, looking very nervous. He looks down at his feet and suddenly realizes Raoul, just before leaving with those thugs, handed him something. And this is Raoul, the adventurer's very map, and the boy stands confused. Why did he just give it away? Alma remembers how Raoul looked scared just a second ago and immediately understood something is wrong. The receptionist leans in and quietly explains that those three are actually among the few B-rank adventurers in the city. She says that in battle they are the best of the best, but in behavior a complete nightmare. There are rumors that they extort rewards from people, calling it payment for adventurers. They say those who refuse immediately become a cautionary example, but they are so talented that even guild workers cannot intervene. Alma looked at her and asked if she called him to the table just to help him escape. She admits that Raoul probably made himself a bait so that he would run away. He even left his card, so Alma would still get the money. The receptionist slid a heavy bag across the counter and told Alma that this was full payment for his materials. She leans closer with a serious expression and sincerely tells him her opinion. She really thinks he needs to get out of there as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the alley, Raoul pressed against the wall, completely exhausted, and Evan stands over him saying it's time to just give up. Evan rummages through Raoul's things and grumbles that he has almost no money. And while he stares at the empty wallet, one of his thugs asks if it wouldn't be better for them to just go back and grab that guy. Raoul tries not to back down, but he is so scared that the sword in his hand literally rattles. The thug stood and laughed, mocking how he trembled when he tried to act tough. Evan moves right up to his face with a sly smile and tells Raoul that he should just stop fighting and join them. He throws him an offer. If he helps them, he will get a share of the money and maybe even a better rank, the P. The plan is simple. The guy already trusts him, so Raoul just has to lure him into the alley, and the thugs will do all the dirty work. Raoul tries to pull himself together and draws his sword. The blade rings with a sharp sound, aimed at the thugs, but Evan is much faster. His heavy punch hits Raoul right in the face and sends him. He retreats, stumbling, and Evan only mocks, "Stop pretending to be tough and do what you're told or you'll die." Raoul is in terrible condition, bleeding and gasping. His hands won't stop trembling, but then he, laughing through the pain, shouts to the elders that they have no idea what they're dealing with. Although they just met, Raoul instantly understood Alma is on a completely different level than everyone else. He marvels at how Alma effortlessly creates powerful magic and finds rare things, as if it's nothing to her. Maybe the boy was kicked out of home, but he has the mind and aura of some other person. Much more important than an ordinary novice, Raoul thinks about how such a person and then someone really looked at him and said he could become a first-class adventurer, so he tightly grips his sword. Raoul draws his sword and stands his ground confidently. He will not let Alma down. Completely beaten, he whispers to himself that he will not betray the boy's hopes, and then he decides if he is to die right here, he will die as a true adventurer. But Evan is completely losing his mind with rage. He looks like he's about to destroy everything around. Standing over the boy, Ivan mocks his attempts to act like some kind of hero, while everything lies in a pool of blood, and Evan says that the boy is just an obstacle that needs to be killed, so they just use slaves to then find Alma. Evan raises his sword to finish the job. Raoul is barely holding on, whispering sorry to Alma because he considers himself just a failure. Everything begins to fade around. He thinks that becoming the best adventurer was just a foolish dream. Suddenly, Alma appears at the top of the stairs. She is incredibly furious at what she sees. Raoul lifts his eyes from the floor and, completely stunned, sees Alma in front of him. He can't believe that this child really came. Evan just smiled, laughing at how stupid the boy was to come here alone. Raoul tries to warn him, tells Alma to run. These guys are the highest rank in the city, and they only want his money. But Evan told him to shut up, stepping with a heavy boot right on Raoul's back. The blow is brutal, leaving Evan. Evan sternly reminds his team, "Keep this boy alive." Alma is just watching, and Evan's face becomes cold and serious. With a mocking grin, Evan asks the boy if he is ready to give all his money already. He thinks that 2.5 million is quite a good price for 2 lives, but Alma does not tremble at all. Alma simply stands her ground, asking if Evan really should be the one who drinks the most among all the adventurers here. He looks the boy straight in the eyes and says that he does not look the part at all, and then Alma sighed and said that Evan is exactly the one who talks too much when the enemy is right in front of him. Evan suddenly changes his mood and tells Alma that it seems this boy is looking for real pain himself. He was going to let him go if he just paid up, but now he stopped pretending to be polite. He let out a loud roar and called Peter and Jake to get ready. Peter catches a bottle of iron skin potion on the fly and quickly throws the buff to his leader, while Jake closes his eyes and launches aggressive power magic. He doubles the physical enhancements for Evan. Evan laughs, his muscles swell. His skin begins to creak. He looms over the boy and says that the sword was never his real weapon. To prove his point, he crushes the hilt of his own sword into dust with one hand, and then he begins to boast. His hands are as strong as an ogre's, and his skin is so tough that no blade can pierce it. He looks down on Alma arrogantly and says that he doesn't have the slightest chance to win this fight, but the boy just stands there as if he's bored. Evan can't stand it and rushes at full speed across the floor, and just then he swung his massive fist right at Alma's head, shouting for him to die, but the boy didn't even blink. Alma doesn't even move. He just reaches out and grabs Evan's huge, energy-charged fist as if it were nothing, instantly stopping it in place. Evan is completely stunned, barely squeezing out a confused sound, and cold sweat breaks out on him. Two henchmen on the side just lose their heads and shout that it's impossible for some kid to stop a blow so easily. Holding the giant, Alma thinks to himself how once in a previous life he believed that magic was his only power. But he suddenly realizes his physical body, with which he was born this time, is actually much stronger than all the buffs Evan is currently using. To prove it, he yanks Evan by his clothes and headbutts him right in the face. The nose instantly shatters. Jake and Peter just stood with their mouths open, completely paralyzed by what they saw. Evan is stunned, blood is flowing from his nose, he can barely make a sound, and Alma pulls his fist back, preparing for a real next strike and then he releases the blow so fast that the air really whistled. The blow was so furious that Peter and Jake could only stand and watch as their leader was simply thrown into the air. Evan lies face down in a huge crater in the back wall, while Peter and Jake just stand as if completely frozen. Peter realizes that even with all those magical enhancements and strengthening medicines, Evan had no chance, so he calls Alma a real monster. Alma exhales tiredly. His hand begins to pulse. He thinks to himself that he still doesn't really know how to hit people. Evan stubbornly refuses to believe it, barely realizing that he was taken down in just 2 hits, but he manages to choke out a groan and forcibly starts pulling himself up. Alma looks at him and indifferently remarks that this guy is tougher than he seems, and how. Panting and gasping, Evan asks why anyone with such power would even bother to help a loser like Raul. Alma doesn't say a word, just stands and looks down, while the big man keeps asking why he is doing all this, leading everyone. Alma really had to stop and ask himself why he got so worked up over a guy he just met. It seems strange to him, especially since nothing like this ever happened in his previous life. Suddenly, Evan explodes and shouts to his subordinates to cut off Raul's head as soon as he gives the signal. Evan laughs like a madman, points directly at Alma, and says he knows exactly what's going on, so he'd better not move a finger. He moved right up close to Alma, shouting in her face and asking if he was really Raul's friend or what. Alma just whispers the word friend under her breath, and finally he realizes he really wants to be friends with that guy. He looks back at his past, and with a burden in his heart, remembers how he never even had a chance to talk to people. Even in this life, being the third son of a noble family, he had an acquaintance circle, but a true friend, someone he could call his own, did not exist until this moment. He thinks about Raul, such a reliable guy who is always ready to take risks for others and does not think about himself. Suddenly, everything becomes clear to Alma. He understands that above all, he wants people like Raul to be happy. He turns his thoughts to the people from his hometown in Flanders and feels how much he likes them. And it all comes down to one simple hope that he has carried with him all this time, who just wants his friends and family to always be happy. Evan looks at Alma and asks hopefully if he also has the gift of body enhancement, because he admits that the guy seems to have a bit more raw strength than he does, but then he points to his head and says that for an adventurer what really matters is the ability to use others and make every situation work to your advantage. He laughed like a madman and said that risking one's life is simply foolish because the fight ends before it even begins. Make Raul grit his teeth and ask, "What the hell is so funny to you?" Alma simply replies that it's nothing. He just thought everything was the opposite. Just at that moment, a heavy thud sounded on the ground, and Nevin completely loses his head, shouting at everyone not to move otherwise. Right here and now he will cut Raul's head off. He barely manages to stay calm and tells the boy that, it seems, his idea of happiness is the complete opposite of what Evan thinks. This left Raul standing in complete shock, and Alma made it clear one thing here is indisputable. He looks him straight in the eyes and says that the fight is already over. Alma looks completely serious as she recalls how everything was long before he even got here, and suddenly everything around quiets down. Evan and his guys just fall silently to the floor. Alma calmly asks what on earth is going on here, and the guys behind start shouting for Jake and Peter to wake up. As if nothing happened, Alma decides it's time to summon her summoning magic. He pulls out a creature named Nightmare White right in front of Evan, and he just stands there, trembling, while his world turns into a complete nightmare. Approaching Raul, Alma whispers the restorative spell Irie, and he stands up again. And Raul slowly sits down, rubbing his head. He is completely out of sorts. He looks around and asks what happened, and suddenly sees Evan being pressed to the ground by some strange black creatures. Raul only utters Alma's name in complete shock, and the boy simply smiles and explains that those creatures are called nightmares. They eat dreams. He goes on to say that they force the one they latch onto to see their worst fears, and then just sit and feed on that terror. Alma says that he actually summoned those creatures and hid them before his arrival, and they won't let go until they are sated with fear. Raul is completely stunned that this boy can even use summoning magic. On the ground, Evan completely loses control, sobbing and shouting, "Mom," as the nightmare takes hold of him. Almost bursting out laughing, amazed at the crazy things that boy is seeing, and although Raoul somewhat regrets joining, he decides everything is fine. Raoul looks at Alma and quietly apologizes, feeling as if failed. He was supposed to be the one helping the child, but it turned out completely the opposite. He looks utterly dejected, saying he feels pathetic because of how everything turned out. Alma tells him that it's not like that at all, explaining that he really only came to return the thing Raoul dropped, and this catches the boy by surprise. He pulls out the adventure registration card and asks Raoul if this is the important thing he was looking for. Looking him straight in the eyes, Alma promised Raoul that he would one day become a great adventurer and added that she was 100% sure of it. Raoul is so moved that he grabs Alma's hand, thanks him, and tells this boy that he owes him a lot for everything. Someone knocks loudly on the door, 3 sharp knocks that cut through the quiet morning. Luna slightly opens the door and responds, looking very surprised when she sees who is standing on the other side. She asks who those boys are, and Alma explains that he is just taking them to the guild, but he really needed to quickly stop by here first before finishing with them. With a serious expression on his face, Alma tells her that he has finally made a decision. And it's all because of where she grew up. He announces it officially right here, and now he is going to the territory of Flanders. The next morning, he can barely sit up in bed, feeling the hangover hit him like a truck. It turned out that as soon as they decided to go to Luna's hometown, all 3 threw a loud farewell party and drank too much. Alma touches his forehead, and with her magic of healing conditions, instantly relieves the headache. Alma tells herself that it's time to get up and get ready to leave, but then he glances aside and he suddenly sees Luna right next to him in bed. She is still half asleep, groaning and rubbing her eyes as she rolls over towards him. Alma froze, cold sweat appeared on her forehead while he looked at her. She simply pressed deeper into the pillows and sleepily whispered to him, "Good morning," causing him to stammer in reply. He tries to stay calm, repeating to himself that she just forgot to book the room for another night. He had to allow her to stay with him, and he constantly swears to himself that nothing happened. But Luna blushed and said that yesterday was quite tense. Steam literally came out of Alma's head. He completely lost his composure, so he begs her to stop joking before his heart gives out, and finally finishes the story about how they ended up here. When the party finally ended, they left Talistella behind and set out on a long journey to Flandria, Luna's hometown. Raoul was traveling with them, laughing at that story, and then asked if the 2 of them had ever managed to visit the guild at all. Alma just looks at him with a blank stare, as if completely forgetting about that part of the plan. From inside the guild building, a loud voice rang out. Someone was loudly shouting apologies for all the trouble they had caused recently. It turns out that Evan and his team, they are all on the floor in a deep bow and look completely broken. Evan is a complete mess, sobbing and all snotty, admitting that they have done truly terrible things to people. And suddenly they are overwhelmed with great remorse, and they begin to return every penny they ever extorted from people. Raoul just laughs as Evan walks away, wondering what kind of crazy nightmares must have tormented those guys to turn them into saints overnight. Then Raoul says that he used to just go with the flow, and asks Luna if she really minded that he joined. Luna thinks for a moment and says that more people would definitely help, even mentioning that Raoul unexpectedly handles his business well. Raoul lights up and says, "Let's just create a new party right here," and now Alma looks completely stunned by this because the thought that he might end up at a party had never even crossed his mind until this moment. Raoul starts to get nervous and asks if he is not allowed to join, but Alma simply admits that it is only because he has never really been to a party. Alma involuntarily turns back to his past, remembering how he trained alone every day, so he tells Raoul that joining the party really sounds like a lot of fun, and he officially agrees. Raoul instantly loses his head and shouts that it's time to hold a gift ranking contest among the participants, This really caught the other 2 by surprise, but Raoul just smiles and says he will go first. He admits his special gift is the Storm Swordsman, an ability that everyone. But Alma immediately understood. As if made for the vanguard, it speeds up sword training and gives a bit of wind magic. Raoul explains, this ritual is no joke, because the one with the worst gift has to pay for everyone's food and everything else. Alma can't help but wonder, why did Raoul turn a happy moment into such a tense game? Raoul laughed loudly, convinced he had already won everything, and turned back to Luna to ask about her gift. The mood instantly changes when it turns out that Luna actually possesses an incredibly powerful gift of a sage. Raoul is ecstatic, exclaiming that for the first time in his life he is meeting a true sage, while Alma is simply stunned how rarely this happens. and remembers how he once desperately wanted that gift for himself. But it wasn't just him, both older brothers were also obsessed with getting it, which only. How strong the influence of that man's father on the family really was. Luna just sweetly shows a peace sign, and Alma tries to comprehend the fact that he never expected to just come across a person with such a legendary gift in a place like that. Luna tries to be nice and says that the gift from the swordsman Gale is actually pretty cool, but Raoul only looks irritated because he felt confident until she showed who is better here. Raoul turns to Alma, thinking that he also has some kind of funny gift. He begins to fear that he is the weakest link, and Alma gets lost and cannot find the words and the pressure really starts to weigh down. He is almost sweating, looking completely cornered by this question as if different conflicts and anxieties started rushing through his head at the same time. Rahul and Luna look at him embarrassed, not understanding what happened, and Alma is afraid that if he honestly talks about his power, everyone will feel awkward around him. Even knowing that he could easily deceive them, he understands he does not want to lie to his new friends. Seeing Alma struggle, Raoul approaches and quietly tells him that he does not have to force himself to speak if he is uncomfortable, and adds that if he ever changes his mind, he will just say so then. He glances at Luna for a moment to get her agreement while Luna just looks at them and admits, actually, she just wanted to show off a little, says she is just honestly talking about it. And Raoul just smiles broadly and thanks both of them for being so relaxed about all this. Luna smiles back and promises that someday she will tell them both the whole story. Alma realizes that he has managed to find truly wonderful friends, or he is just lucky, but in any case, they already believe that he can handle it completely. Still, Raoul admits that he is still curious about the limits of Alma's power. He knows about the boxes with items, summoning creatures, and teleportation, and his general magic is already crazy. He looks at Alma and directly asks if there is anything he can't do, and this leads to. Alma thinks this is a difficult question, because with his magic, he can do almost anything if he wants to. Raoul suddenly remembered the special magic that shows how strong someone is, and asked if they should try it on the two of them. Raoul thinks this idea sounds insanely cool, and he is almost certainly ready to try it too, so they activate the analysis magic and evaluative light rolls over the whole group, checking their stats. Having arrived by carriage to the town near the border, they passed the checkpoint and continued the rest of the way on foot. We step into the forest. Luna does not take her eyes off the map. It turns out it takes 2 days to reach her territory. They set up camp as the sun begins to set, and Alma takes out some food for everyone, while no one. Noticing a bunch of camping gear from a past life in the inventory, he thought it was finally time to use it. It's just perfect. His magic keeps all their food and water fresh all the time. Looking at the cozy camp, Luna remembers how, when she first left home, she had to carry a giant, heavy backpack. Raoul just laughs and tells her she's lucky Alma makes this road back much easier. Alma just smiles, thinking about how quiet it is in the forest, and no monster has appeared to spoil the mood. A massive white wolf in the dark trees just sits and intently watches the group, and Alma turns around and whispers to himself, Fenrir. He understands, next to such a monster, other monsters really do not dare to appear. Raoul says the food is excellent, and Luna agrees. She thinks it's nice to sometimes eat simply outdoors. Meanwhile, Alma thinks about how smart and strong these Fenrirs are. They basically rule the forest. Suddenly he hears a voice in his head, telepathy, and that's all. Alma replies that it seems he has never met any Fenrir before. The wolf says that's not the point. He just came to see what kind of monster appeared in the forest. Alma asks if he means him, indignantly saying that calling him a monster is too harsh. The wolf just looks at him and asks if he even understands how much magic he emits. Alma tells himself that he is quite confident in his magical levels, because in his previous life he trained insanely, and Fenrir says that his enormous strength simply drove the entire forest into a panic. Monsters tremble with fear, and even the giant wolf admits that he is also a bit tense, and that makes him almost stop and think. He realizes that what all those monsters were really afraid of. Turned out, it was not the legendary wolf at all, it was him all along. After that mess in the bar, he now holds the magic inside with all his might, and releases it only when he truly casts spells, but animals apparently have better intuition for this than humans. Alma realizes he messed up a bit because he released his energy too loudly, so he decides to fix it immediately. He pulls out a concealment spell called Nimli, a clever trick that hides his presence and he freezes for a second, focusing to firmly lock all that power. Fenrir froze in surprise. He says that Alma's presence completely disappeared, as if he is trying to track a cloud of mist. Returning to the camp, Luna also noticed that something was wrong. Some energy seemed to have vanished from Alma, and she was left guessing what was really going on. Rael looked around and saw that Luna was acting strangely, and someone nearby asked her what was wrong, in F. Fenrir watches them intently with narrowed eyes. He understands that the group has finally noticed his presence, and in. As the atmosphere changes, Rael begins to tremble, and Luna just stands and stares ahead in shock. Raoul barely utters the words, stammering. This is Fenrir, the legendary S-class monster, standing right in the middle. In the middle of the forest, he finally puts all the pieces together and understands why the forest was so quiet. It was a bad omen all along. Raoul shouts for everyone to retreat, but he himself is almost completely calm. He tells Raoul to calm down. The wolf is not hostile, although it is the reason other monsters retreated. Suddenly, a loud rustle comes from the trees. Something in the air is wrong, and someone thinks, what is really happening here? While they sit by the fire and nearby a huge wolf, Alma suddenly notices something. A strange pressure emanates from Luna, which he has never felt before, and when the air begins to glow, Luna becomes serious, and a radiance swirls around her. Behind Luna emerges a huge shining spirit, like some divine figure. Luna focuses and calls for mercy in her eyes. It is clear she is ready to let go. Behind her appears a released giant spirit, while she releases a huge burst of white energy that fills the entire area. Fenrir the wolf is completely frozen by the sudden power move. He just froze, staring at Luna. She looked as shocked by what she just did as he was. Alma realizes what happened. It was he who repelled the attack on reflex. A dull thud is heard on the ground, and Fenrir wonders if the girl's reaction was even necessary. Alma raises her eyes to the huge wolf and says that he apologizes, explaining that Luna was just a little scared, and then he adds that he hopes the wolf will find the strength to forgive her. Fenrir does not lose his composure and even apologizes in return, saying that he was rude to appear in the middle of the night like that. Alma convinces Luna that the wolf is not a threat to them. If he wanted, he would have already finished them off before they even noticed him, and Fenrir agrees with that. The giant wolf looked intently at her, but could not stop thinking about that strange magic she had just used, and where it came from. After that last move, Luna looked completely exhausted, and Fenrir felt that her magical wave was almost like summoning magic. But before they move on, the giant wolf sets everything straight, telling Alma directly that she is a girl, not a boy. Alma blushes and apologizes while Raoul peeks from behind a tree and completely loses his mind over the fact that Alma is really talking to the legendary wolf. Alma says indifferently that it is just telepathy, and Raoul feels even worse, grumbling that some child knows much more magic than a wise man like him. Raoul finally gathers the last crumbs of courage and asks why Fenrir appeared in their camp at all, and the she-wolf explains the real reason. She says there is someone else who is just dying to meet Alma. As if this person desperately wants Alma to be nearby, forcing everyone. Alma agreed to the meeting, but he is truly surprised that such a huge creature as Fenrir came all the way here just to deliver an invitation. Alma is only amazed. What kind of crazy person is so powerful that he dares to command even the forest lord, which she is? But Fenrir simply sincerely shows her his gratitude and asks if he is ready to go meet him right now. Fenrir looks frozen when she makes a stunning confession. The little creature nearby is actually her son, and as soon as Luna sees this little one, she loses her head, and the puppy just stands, wags his tail, and waves his paw. Raoul is just shocked, loudly shouting how incredible this monster is, and the puppy just sits and looks charming and Alma cannot stay silent, gently tells the little wolf cub that he is not scary at all, and that means. Because of this, Raoul looks quite tense, and Luna just keeps shouting how cute that little one is. Puppy rolls onto his back, shows his belly, snaps back at them, and reminds everyone that he is also Fenrir. He tries with all his might to act like a big guy, laughs, and asks the group if they finally fear him, but everything completely turns against him. The whole group just froze and thinks he is too cute to be scary. And finally Raoul gives up, starts petting him, and asks the little wolf if he is being petted exactly where he needs. Raoul blushes uncontrollably when he excitedly says how fluffy that wolf is, and Luna simply holds the puppy tightly to herself, completely focused on its fur. The little wolf pup enjoys the attention, demanding more petting, and Raoul notices that it is in a wonderful mood. And Raoul cannot resist. He shouts that he also wants to pet the fluffy one, but Alma moves on to talk to Fenrir's mother. She becomes serious and asks Alma why someone like him ended up on this land. He almost starts to answer, but freezes, realizing that he actually hasn't asked Luna all the details yet. So he simply tells the giant wolf that he has a few matters to attend to in the territory ahead. This makes Fenrir wary, as if warning him that forest monsters might come out to raid the local fields. Alma is stunned to hear about the monsters causing trouble, and while he listens to those talks, Senator Fenrir explains that the forest has recently yielded a meager harvest, forcing the creatures to go and destroy human settlements just to find enough food to survive, leaving everything. He almost froze for a moment, just thinking about how badly things have gotten for the people nearby. Alma gazes at the landscape and thinks, Thanatart was just a small place, so Luna's native lands are probably very similar to it. So if such a tiny territory were to be raided by monsters, the lives of the people there would turn into a real hell. He realizes, while everyone is heading to the kingdom, these rural corners are declining and the number of people in them is decreasing. This makes him wonder whether Luna's request to him is really connected to all these problems. He almost starts to devise a plan, thinking that instead of just going out and killing monsters, he needs to do more, so he thanks Fenrir for the warning, and the giant wolf only growls in response. Fenrir asks what he plans, and suggests telling the forest monsters to leave and leave that territory alone, but Alma just smiles and says it's okay, because he actually intends to use all this chaos to his advantage. The giant wolf stares at him, repeats the word use, and asks if he is going to do something suspicious. Alma reveals nothing. He only looks back at the wolf and quietly says not to worry. Alma softly smiles and says he hopes his plan will not harm anyone and will ultimately turn out to be good for all involved. Hearing this, Fenrir says he will take his word for it, because he believes Alma has the clearest mind among all mortals he has ever met. He sounds almost surprised and asks the giant wolf if he can really read minds, but Fenrir just waved it off, saying it's a simple matter of experience, and the boy remained a bit confused while the wolf says he has been wandering the world for 1,000 years and has seen all kinds of people, so just by looking into the boy's eyes, he immediately sees his character. Alma suddenly understood everything and says, if this is about the Lord of Monsters Fenrir, then he actually loves people. The wolf himself admits probably that's why he keeps his territory so close to human dwellings. Before leaving, Fenrir told Alma to come to him if he ever needed anything, saying he still owes him a great favor. The little puppy got so excited and shouted that he also wants to go to the village, but his father immediately put an end to it, and when the two wolves ran away, everyone finally settled down for the night. Alma recalls Fenrir's words and thinks that the wolf's talks about debt are an exaggeration since he just found that man's son. The morning sun rises, and yesterday's campfire is just cold embers. The group moves forward, walking along the forest path toward the gates visible in the distance. Finally, they reach Flandria, a simple village with thatched roofs and dirt roads, and all that. And for a moment freezes, looking around, and suddenly realizes that this quiet little place is where Luna is really from. Luna did not waste time. She decisively told them to follow her and immediately moved ahead. She walked past small houses and fences, and the boys walked right behind her, not falling behind. Alma keeps looking back at the simple tools and rural setting, and Raoul laughs a little, saying that it is insanely quiet here, much more rural than he had imagined. Alma agrees there really is silence here, but it is clear that he is beginning to feel some strange atmosphere around. The sun begins to set behind the mountains, gently flooding the simple huts with warm light. Alma and Raoul stop to take in everything around, looking at the landscape with boundless admiration. Luna notices that they are falling behind, turns around and anxiously asks, "Is something wrong?" Raoul was a little embarrassed and quickly whispered that it was nothing. He and Alma were just talking about. What a beautiful area this is, Alma agrees. The whole village seems incredibly calm and quiet. Luna smiled softly and said that he was right, adding that there are wonderful people here and it is truly a pleasant place. So she tells them not to stop and leads the boys deeper into the heart of the village. Alma looks at her and thinks about how much Luna must love her native city and the people who live here. He decides that he is actually very excited to finally meet and talk with the people of this territory, and just then they approach a huge wooden structure that immediately stands out among everything around. Raoul froze. Luna leads the group inside the building and joyfully exclaims that she has finally returned home, but as soon as she steps over the threshold, the younger girl rushes to her and throws herself at her. The blow was so strong that Luna was winded, and she began to cough. Inertia carries them both. They roll across the room and crash into the wall, and Alma just watches. And the younger girl simply hugged her and joyfully exclaimed, "Welcome back." She leans closer, looks into her eyes, and asks if everything is all right or if by any chance she has fallen ill. Then she explains how terribly worried she was for Luna to return safely after all. Luna does not know how to navigate at all. Luna mumbles that at least she will find her own house, and her sister just laughs. And when Luna complains that the tackle ruined her clothes, the girl tells her. No excuses, and Alma meanwhile realizes that he has just met Luna's younger sister. Luna starts introducing, telling Sanya that Alma is here to help them, and then she points to Raoul, calls him an extra, and finally introduces Sanya to Alma. Alma greets warmly and says that they will be here a little longer, so he hopes they can get along, but Sanya just looks at him suspiciously, barely whispering hello. Later, a man with lush mustaches appears and warmly greets them, thanking the group for coming to their remote land. He introduced himself Eric, smiled, and said that the woman next to him is his wife Mabel. It turns out Eric is actually Luna's father and the lord who rules this territory, and both he and his wife are incredibly hospitable and immediately made the group feel at home in their house. Everyone gathers around the table with warm food and talks to each other, although it seems someone in the room still holds a bit of a grudge. Luna turns to her younger sister, calls her by name, and tries to get her to show at least a little politeness, and she just continues, explaining that Alma and Raoul came all the way from Talistella at her request, although Raoul is not thrilled that he was mentioned just by the way. Luna tells Sanya that you can't treat guests like that, and the girl swallows, looks away, pouting but then sent. Then Sanya repeats the name of the city to herself, and it seems like something finally clicked in her head. She asks if Luna really had to look for a strong fighter in the labyrinthine city of Labstella, a question that Luna stands in complete shock. Sanya coldly remarks that Talistella is just a trading town, and reproaches her sister for not having inquired a bit before leaving, while the lecture continues, and Sanya reproachfully says, "That's exactly why Luna shouldn't travel alone." Luna sweats and tries to brush it off. Everyone makes mistakes. Luna is completely overwhelmed by the scolding, and honestly, in this situation, Sanya looks like the older sister. She keeps scolding her all the time. After Sanya finished venting, she snorted and turned away, leaving Alma standing in a very awkward silence. It's immediately clear, Sanya is on edge, tense, and doesn't trust newcomers at all, and there is probably a big reason why she is so defensive against everyone. One of the local farmers looks completely broken. He plaintively says that monsters have been destroying their fields lately, so no matter how many scarecrows they put up to stop the damage, it did not help them at all. The day after arriving in Flanders, things were still not very good, but almost. Alma sets off together with Eric to the locals to finally hear what is happening in the village. All the stories are the same, and the monsters have become much more active in recent years. Eric listens carefully as they explain that recently a farm nearby was attacked. To make matters worse, the land here is completely barren and dead, this means that although no one has died yet, the empty fields and lack of money keep everyone trapped in poverty. Eric looks exhausted as he admits that, although he is a lord here, he does not know how to fight and cannot help the harvest and honestly, it just drives him crazy that he is so helpless while his people suffer. Looking at him, Alma sees how much this guy really cares and understands that. Behind Eric's gentle face hides a burning heart. He is fiercely devoted to everyone who lives on his lands. It is quite clear to Alma Luna probably grew up seeing how her father felt this, and suddenly Eric came to his senses and apologized. The pressure of the situation momentarily got the better of him. He tells Alma that he is sincerely glad to have come from that other region and hopes to give himself time to settle in. Alma just watches Eric's reaction, and Luna begins to giggle at the sudden change in Dad's mood. Eric tries to get everything back on the right track and says that very soon he will start making moves, leading the group went deeper into the forest, tirelessly discussing the future of their village. The girl stands among the trees and gazes into the depths of the forest. Alma thinks about Sanya and cannot understand. Does such a child really have any errands all the way in the forest? He turns back to Eric and anxiously reminds him that he said the local monsters have become too active lately. Eric confirms this, explaining that poisonous lizards are the main problem now because all they do is store food and prepare to lay eggs. In the forest, Sanya clenches her hand, reminding herself that approaching the nest is strictly forbidden, but she notices something through the trees and realizes she has finally found what she was looking for. Right next to a large hollow tree, a whole bunch of poisonous lizards crawl back and forth. Sanya pressed herself into the bushes and held against the wind so the monsters wouldn't catch her scent. She pulled out some sleepy pollen and lightly threw it into the air, watching as the cloud of dust slowly drifted toward the nest. Everything is working perfectly, so she begins to sneak past the sleeping lizards, whispering to herself, "Just move slowly." Sanya peeks out from behind the rocks, confident that everything is going exactly according to her plan, but then anxiety grips her. How will she carry all this by herself? And she regrets not taking her sister. Suddenly, with a loud hiss, a poisonous lizard jumped out and completely caught her by surprise. Sanya panics. Why did it wake up if her sleepy pollen was supposed to keep it asleep for hours? The lizard didn't wait and spat a glob of disgusting poison right at her. Barely missing, it hits a nearby tree and melts the wood right from the trunk. The monster, embarrassed that it missed, only sees Alma calmly sitting on the branches. Alma jumps down and asks Sanya if everything is okay, and she just looks at him in complete astonishment. He explains that one lizard was probably already asleep. Its breathing had slowed, so it simply didn't notice the pollen. Alma smiled at her, said he was just glad he followed her, and asked if she could tell him the whole story. Sanya froze for a moment and looks like she has a bunch of thoughts, before she finally gathers her voice and whispers, thanks to Alma for intervening and saving her. Alma asks why she would risk approaching that nest again. He thinks she went for the eggs, but she cuts him off. You are wrong. She says that she was actually trying to retrieve the harvest stolen by monsters from their village. This completely confused Alma. He never thought lizards could want plants at all. He again returns his thoughts to the moment when the Lord mentioned monster attacks and wonders that man did not seem worried at all. Alma says it would be easier to just hunt wild beasts for food, but Sanya flares up and says that is not enough. She looks him straight in the eyes and says that if nothing changes soon, the pressure will become too strong and her father will completely lose the lordship. Having let everything out, Sanya's energy finally ran out and she fell into a deep sleep. Eric stands in his office with his back to Alma and realizes that Sanya has probably already blabbed to someone about their situation. Turning around to meet his gaze, he admits that he will soon be stripped of the title Lord. Alma just looks back, thinking to herself that the girl actually told him only a crumb of what was happening. Eric does not calm down. He explains to the whole group that their territory has not been able to pay any tribute to the crown for years. He bitterly recounts how every year they had to send the harvest to the capital, but bad harvests and monster attacks destroyed everything. This causes the authorities in the capital to whisper that he is simply unfit for this job. He lowers his gaze and says that the investigator will arrive in 3 days, and he had hoped to manage to gather the harvest. But the problem with the monsters has only worsened recently. These creatures endlessly destroy everything they try to grow. Finally, everything falls into place for Alma. He sees why Sanya risked so much trying to handle those monsters alone. Alma raised her hand and told Eric that he might have a temporary way out of their problem. Alma tries to help and asks if it is possible to simply buy the harvest in neighboring towns and use it for delivery. But Eric's wife, Mabel, intervenes and says that they have already thought about that. She shows them the storage and says that they need 5,000 gallons of harvest, but even if they gathered every last crumb from the entire territory, they would have only 1,500. And everything must be at least quality B, and they simply cannot buy that much anywhere else. There is no money. Eric looks completely broken, says there are only 3 days left. He has no options at all and no. He knows that he will probably be expelled or accused of harming the country's interests, but Sanya suddenly shouts that her father is not guilty of anything. Eric just looks at her, and Sanya clearly has had enough of this. She lashes out at Alma's group, telling them that they have already seen many people who appear and pretend to want to help. She explains that advisors usually just talk nicely to deceive her dad. He is so kind that they then steal his money and run away, leaving them stuck on barren lands, which are constantly destroyed by monsters anyway. Sanya does not calm down. She shouts that it is not her father's fault and that there are simply too many bad people around. She cannot stand it, clutches her head with her hands, and wonders why her dad has to suffer like this. Eric calls her name, standing over her, watching his daughter sobbing on the floor while he gently strokes her head and says he is proud that she is angry because of him, but explains that being a leader means believing in people and taking responsibility when everything goes wrong. Luna just looks at them with pain in her eyes, feeling the full weight of what is happening, shifting her gaze from her father to her sister. Almost stands by the door, looks at all this, and bitterly regrets not having returned earlier to help. He understands that to fix this, 3,500 gallons of harvest are needed, and this number hits him, especially since he knows. He knows for sure there isn't nearly that much food in his box of things. Alma sees a family curled up in complete despair and decides he just wants to find a way to make them happy again. Eric looks up at him and says he has no right to ask for help because he can't even offer a reward, but it's clear he's at the limit of his strength. Eric looks down, appears completely broken, and asks Alma to take care of these people when he's gone, wants her to pass on his wisdom to the village to whoever becomes the next lord, and he sincerely admits that this place is in trouble, but says it's only because he was a foolish leader. The people who live here don't deserve to suffer because of his mistakes. Alma just looks at him and understands. Even when Eric has lost everything, he still only thinks about the safety of his people. Suddenly, Alma looks Eric straight in the eyes and says he will manage it. Eric's eyes light up. He can hardly believe what he hears and asks if Alma is really serious. He lets out a huge sigh of relief and says he can finally relax. Territory will be fine even if they force him to leave. But he almost stops him on the spot, says there will be no later because he won't let Eric go anywhere. He knows this might seem a bit selfish, but has already decided to intervene. He is right here and immediately opens his box of things, and piles of items start falling from the air with a loud crash onto the ground. The air. Eric is just sitting on the floor, completely stunned. He raises his eyes to Alma, utterly confused, as if asking what is going on here. Alma calmly smiles and tells him that in just 3 days he will sort everything out so that Eric can fix this mess. He is determined to do everything so that this man remains in power as Lord, and for this he definitely knows he must provide 3,500 gallons of harvest to save the situation. Alma reviews a pile of goods and says that the quality seems to satisfy him, while Eric just stands, stunned by what he sees, unable to utter a single word. Raoul cannot contain his excitement. He grabs Alma by the shoulders and shouts his name, while Alma only tries to process this sudden outburst. Luna watches the scene unfold, quietly pronouncing Alma's name with a worried look, and Sanya stands nearby, both clearly feeling the weight of the situation. The clock ticks. The kingdom will send investigators in only 3 days, so there is almost no time left. Alma looks at the dry, ravaged earth lying in his hands and tells everyone that they need to start preparing right now. In the memory of that meeting, Eric looks utterly desperate as he asks Julius if he really wants all of them to die. He keeps begging him, each time reminding how much they have actually done and what they have sacrificed over the years for the sake of the country. Eric calls this whole situation outrageous and earnestly asks him to think about the territory, and most importantly about the people who live there and have nowhere to go. Julius is completely unmoved, calmly explaining that if you look at the country as a living being, you must be ready to cut off infected parts to save the rest. He says directly, if they do not dare to take the painful step and get rid of the problematic districts, then the whole country is doomed. Eric understands that they have reached a dead end and says that there is no point in talking anymore, so he gives a signal. His men draw their blades, magic flares up, and they prepare for battle. One of the knights leaned toward Eric and quietly asked if he really meant it seriously, considering who they were dealing with, while Eric was just trying to figure out their next move. He dismisses formality and shouts at Julius, "Get ready," calls him a great sage while horror paralyses him when suddenly giant icy spikes grow from the ground and instantly freeze everyone. Let everyone remember, Julius is officially the strongest wizard in the entire kingdom, and after. When the dust settled, Edward called Eric a sinner for tax evasion and ordered the guards to impale his head on a stake before the main gates. Leaving this bloody hell behind, Julius Kamlai asks Edward what is next on their list, and Edward's face became serious, and he said he wanted to discuss some personnel issues regarding the territory of Flanders. The two of them move deeper into the palace, leaving chaos behind. The sun shines over the massive palace walls, and Julius walks along quiet garden paths, as if full of thoughts while he returns to Edward, he asks how things are in Flanders. Edward admits that the harvest is almost ready for shipment, but the remote location turns the preparation into a complete headache. Yet, Julius is not worried at all. He just nods and calmly says that everything is going exactly according to his plan. Edward noted, although Flanders is very far away, it is a strategic bottleneck between the Western empires, so it must be kept under control in case everything goes awry. And then he categorically says, if the local lord tries to interfere with them, he must simply be gotten rid of without hesitation. He closes his eyes and tells his subordinate that he trusts him to handle the rest of the dirty work as he sees fit. On the outskirts of the territory, a boy named Cedric finally appears, looks around the trees, and says that now he is officially in Flanders. The royal court appraiser Cedric adjusts his monocle and aloud asks if this is just another boring province in the middle of nowhere. Then a local appears, bows low, and sincerely thanks him for having traveled all that way to visit them. As they walk, someone said that the local lord will meet them with open arms, and Eric gestured for them to follow him, leading them through the trees until Edward looks suspiciously and mentally decides that this boy is clearly feeling generous right now. He recalls the reports. Supposedly, these people did not even come close to the quota and probably mixed in scraps to fake the volume. Then suddenly Eric stops and tells them that they have arrived. Eric, pointing at the huge boxes, proudly says that there are exactly 5,000 kilograms of harvest here as requested, and this is definitely not the junk Edward was hoping for. Edward, all sweaty, asks what the hell is going on, and Eric just looks at him and says that there is actually one big problem with the harvest. He scratched his head and admitted that it was supposed to be level B, but most turned out to be level A, and Edward doesn't understand how that can be a drawback. Edward froze on the spot in shock, muttering that this must be nonsense, while Cedric tries to get his attention. Cedric takes one of the potatoes, examines it, and is convinced that Eric is really telling the truth about their quality. He can't believe his eyes, says that this is just crazy, so many rows of crops gathered in one place. He looks at the shiny fruits and admits that he has been a royal appraiser for years, but has never seen anything like in Flanders. Edward completely loses it, says that this is impossible because Flanders shouldn't have either the money or the technology for such crops, and he starts asking how they did it when. Cedric intervened, saying excitedly that he would really like to know the secret for his future studies, and Eric just said, "Let the expert explain everything." He seems to be standing there with a confident expression on his face, as if he has everything under control, while he gria. For the first time, he greets Edward with a polite smile, doing everything to look as pleasant as possible before he calls himself Alma Fellows, but instantly snapped out of it and corrects him, telling sweaty and exhausted Edward that he is now simply Alma. Edward recognizes the surname Fellows. It is from the nobility of the Eastern Empire, and at that moment, someone says that Alma works as an advisor for this territory. Alma calls everyone to follow her, jokes that Edward is too serious for a simple farm inspection, and leads them further while Edward still admits that the fields look incredibly fertile, and Cedric cannot believe that they still have such a large surplus after everything they have already given to the kingdom. Alma just looks at them and casually says that the crops they see now were actually planted only this morning. Edward and Cedric simply lost their minds. Edward shouted back to make sure once again if Alma really meant that everything was planted just this morning. And Cedric is also in panic, shouting that it is impossible, plants cannot grow from seeds to full size in less than one day. It turned out the secret is a special liquid that was splashed over every field throughout the territory. The inspectors immediately recognize it as the legendary fertilizer of the god of harvest, a crazy thing that makes crops grow insanely fast. Cedric pressed his face close to Alma and desperately asked how he could even get something so legendary and precious. Alma just looks embarrassed and asks if it is really such a big deal, and Cedric tells him that he has only seen mentions of it in old books. Cedric continues the history lesson, enthusiastically explaining that this fertilizer not only acts quickly, in fact, it keeps the soil fertile and flawless for another 100 years. This leaves the local farmers with their mouths agape, barely repeating the thought that the land could last so long. Raoul looked at Alma and laughed. It seems that the guy, besides magic, also has a natural talent for working the land. Alma just shrugged and waved it off. He says he has no special talent, he just happened to have a rare item in his bag.